Okay, and then you can zoom in and out like this too.
Oh, nice.
And the same thing with the mayor's script. It's on there too. Yeah, because and I'm not really worried about that because that's more on the back end. That's why I'm not worried about it. And a lot of these, what, 80 feet don't even
I feel like all the fun is down there.
I mean, I get your concerns. I just think that what I want you to start off more with us having
How did you get the steamed milk? You put it in at the end? Or?
No, you can oh, well, pick a tea latte or anything that has latte.
Ah.
You do a milk packet first, and then you froth the milk, and then you put packet.
Muffins, ear muffins.
Your muffins.
Put these muffins on your yeah. You'll never unhear that now.
No, I won't. No, I'm going skiing with like my daughter. I'm like, put on your muffins. Dang it. Nah, just I don't like the jig. Two screens are cute.
You heard much about the storm we're supposed to get tomorrow?
It's so weird, like
Oh, you want access to it?
No, I don't. I just need to be able to like not
and then
feel
you
like I
read
need
it and they're like
Stretch Armstrong to get to my.
And
Yeah.
in one thing I read, that in some of the counties they're looking at historic snows.
Well, Eastern Plains is supposed to get up to 3 feet.
Oh, you know? I don't even know if I did.
Yeah, that's what I was reading.
Yeah,
might have to
like
depend on
Lyman and that area, like historic
What?
snow. Yeah. And we're gonna be like 6 to 12.
No, to because I
When
don't
they
know
say
if I
6 to
have.
12, I'm always
I have-
thinking 12 to 18. You know, it starts and then it keeps going and going and going.
Well, that's how the last storm felt. It was like 2 to 7. Like,
we got a lot of snow just right now though.
I'm eating candy. That's one of my highlights. I feel like I need candy for the next hour.
all right, moment of levity. So, what kind of shoes do frogs wear? They are open-toed. Kind of got to be there for it. Did you hear about the red and blue ships that collided? Sadly, all the sailors were marooned.
I would thank you for that, Matt, but I don't know that I can offer thank you for jokes that terrible. So. That's what we're here for. All right, it is 6 p.m. Elisha, are we ready to go at Channel 8? All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So I call the Thursday, November 7th, 2024 regular meeting of the Boulder City Council to order. Elisha, if we could do a roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Good evening, council, and good evening, our attendees. We'll start tonight's roll call, as usual, with Councilmember Adams.
Taisha, yes.
Benjamin.
Here.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes, present.
Councilmember Folkerts.
Present.
Marquis.
Here.
Schuhart.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Spear. Councilmember Wallach.
Present.
And Weiner.
Here.
Mayor, we have our quorum.
Thanks. And I'm just hearing from Councilmember Spear, who's participating remotely, that she can't see or hear any. Oh, she sees Chambers now. Okay. And Nicole, we're just calling your roll. And hopefully you can come out and say present.
Just said something about saying present. So if that's for Nicole, I am present.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, great. Well, before we get into the business matters of the meetings, I just want to say a couple of words. Just because in chatting with community members over the last couple of days, I've definitely heard some worry and concern since the election from a number of community residents. And I just wanted to say on behalf of the city government that we're all in this together. Like the city has each and every one of our backs here, all of our residents, regardless of their identities or backgrounds. And whatever's coming next, we're getting through it together. And I know I have the partnership of the city manager, the city attorney, all the city government and city councilors in that. So we're gonna get through whatever comes next. And Nicole, did you want to say something?
Yes, yeah, if I can just have a minute to do so. I know, as you said, Mayor, a lot of people are still processing the election results, and a lot of folks in the community are feeling some fear and uncertainty about what happens next. Certainly not a comfortable situation for many in the community, especially all of those whose identities were targets of hate and fear during this election, the immigrant and the trans communities in particular. And I just want to acknowledge some of the people who are doing double work this week, supporting and advocating for others while they're also processing their emotions. Starting with the city staff who are here tonight and those who've been working all week in our city to keep us going. The workers who've been showing up to help meet our community's basic needs, and the community leaders and nonprofit staff who are supporting all of those who always suffer the worst consequences from oppression, and the local advocates who are continuing the fight for a just and compassionate future. I really appreciate all the extra work folks are doing, and just wanted a chance to say thank you. So thank you.
Appreciate that, Nicole. All right. So our first item of business is I'm asking for a consideration of a motion to, a motion to amend the agenda to remove item 3D, which is a consideration of a motion to approve the 2025 council meeting calendar and reschedule that to the November 21st regular meeting.
So moved.
Second for Mark. Okay, motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that carries. Did you have your hand up? No, okay, that's fine. Carries 8-1. All right, so next we have item 1A, which is the Transgender Day of Remembrance Declaration, which will be presented by myself. And I'll invite Lucinia Magic from Rocky Mountain Equality to come join me for this. Transgender Day of Remembrance, November 20th, 2024. Transgender people in Boulder have long been and continue to be valued and important members of our community. Transgender people are often discriminated against in the areas of housing, employment, and healthcare. Social stigma, a lack of comprehensive protections and welcoming spaces, and erasure limit this community's ability to fully express themselves, access services, and hold equal rights under law. On this day, we honor transgender people whose lives were cut short in acts of transphobic violence. In addition to the threat of violence, transgender people often have inequitable access to income, employment, adequate medical care, housing, food, and acceptance in public life. Moreover, these disparities are compounded for our transgender community members of color. Black and Latina transgender women are murdered at disproportionate rates and face a uniquely complex system of discrimination and violence. Today, we honor transgender people in death for the fullness of their lives and identities, their joys, their contributions to the community, and their connections with their loved ones. The City of Boulder welcomes and embraces our transgender community members and will continue to uphold our shared values of inclusion, equity, and belonging by creating an inclusive community and not tolerating acts of violence or discrimination against transgender people. The City of Boulder will continue to advocate for transgender cultural competency training, expanding programs to support transgender people, and providing access for equal representation of transgender people in the decision-making processes of city government. Of note, in 2022, our esteemed partners at Rocky Mountain Equality championed legislation to mandate demographic health data collection. Thanks to their work, this information can soon be used to address health disparities across spheres of sexual orientation, gender identity, disability status, race, and ethnicity. As implementation moves forward, the city will align our data practices with the state so that we can better understand and respond to the unique needs of all our community members. On November 20th of each year, we honor the memory of transgender people who have been murdered because of their identity and acknowledge the level of extreme violence and fear faced by transgender people nationally and internationally. And so we, the City Council of the City of Boulder, Colorado, declare November 20th, 2024 as Transgender Day of Remembrance. And I'll just say before I pass along the mic to Luciana, this is an area of particular personal meaning for me as I have trans kids and other trans family members, and I see the discrimination and the challenges that they face on a daily basis. And so I'm so glad that you could be here with us. And so, Luciana, if you'd like to say a few words.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, and also thank you, esteemed members in the City Council. It's an honor to be here, especially during the times that we're living in right now, to be able to accept this declaration, and also to continue to push forward in the work of the resilience of our community and to continue to show that and showcase that to the world, and also our local communities here. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we now move to open comments. So, Alicia, if you can go over our public participation guidelines, please.
All right, thank you. Again, good evening, everyone. We will now review the public participation at City Council meeting guidelines. The city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. This vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and the council, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. For more information about this vision and the community engagement processes, we ask that you please visit our website at bouldercolorado.gov/services/productive-atmospheres. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. These will be upheld during this meeting. Participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they are commonly known by, and individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted online. Only one person at a time at the podium unless an accommodation like an interpreter is required. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No standing in or otherwise blocking the aisles. No participant shall stand or hold items such as signs or flags in a manner that blocks the view of another person. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. We ask that you not affix items to the podium or dais or walls or other surfaces of the chamber. Signs, flags, or other items used to communicate must be held by one person when displayed. Obscenity, other epithets based on race, gender, or religion, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the meeting will not be tolerated. And lastly, in-person participants are asked to refrain from expressing support or disagreement verbally or with sounds such as applause or snapping, with the exception of declarations. Traditionally, support is shown through American Sign Language applause or jazz hands. Again, thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Alicia. All right, we're going to start with our in-person testifiers. Each of you will get 2 minutes. I'll call 3 names. If you can start moving towards the front as your name is called. Our first 3 speakers are James Evans, Rob Smoke, and Evan Ravitz. So James is first, and I'll just mention I will keep everybody strictly to that 2-minute limit in the interest of fairness. Is James here? Not seeing him, then Rob Smoke is up next.
Hi, my name is Rob Smoke. I live in Boulder. I've lived here since 1986, more or less. 2 phrases I want to throw at you real quick, neither of which are pleasant. The first is moral injury, and the second is empathic distress. And I think if we were, if we had a group discussion, we could go into depth on what that means. But what it means to me is, and what I know it to mean from experience, is that there are people in our community, in this city, who are suffering because of the genocide that is occurring as we speak, in which our government is disregarding and funding and supporting. Just as we speak tonight, and just as I'm speaking here, there might have been individuals, civilians in Gaza who've died from forced starvation or from the bombing. And because we do have some reliable sources, some very reliable news sources, and because we have literally every human rights organization, every humanitarian organization, and the UN, and world courts, recognizing that this is the occurrence happening right now in our world, it's really incumbent on all of us to not be silent. Silence itself is action. It's negative action. It's doing exactly what the perpetrators would prefer we do nothing. And I could talk about politics, but it's about people here who are suffering, as well as the people in Gaza who need help. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Evan Ravitz, Ezzedine Alsay, and Michael Rabb.
So it turns out that genocide is bad politics, and joyous genocide disgusts people. Harris happily proclaimed she'd be lethal and laughed as she told Oprah that she'd shoot to kill any house invader. Jared Polis smirked and giggled at Gaza protesters last December. Boulder is grooming junior genocide promoters. Our Representative Neguse votes everything for Israel, gave Netanyahu dozens of standing ovations, and is the assistant Democratic leader keeping other Dems funding the genocide. And former council member Junie Joseph, now state rep, is co-chair of the so-called Aerospace Defense Caucus. The caucus represents war profiteers and so-called Homeland Security, which is spying on us. I emailed her and got back propaganda about the great consumer byproducts of war, omitting the main byproduct, weapons given to police departments to attack protesters and kill black people like Junie and Joe. Now we learn that Boulder has invested about $30 million or $300 for each Boulderite in companies making stuff Israel uses to kill. Besides Caterpillar tractors destroying Palestine, this includes Microsoft and Cisco, which along with IBM, which Boulder invested in until recently, monitor everything in Palestinian phones to track, harass, and kill them. IBM's work for the Nazis made extermination of Jews much faster and more efficient. You'd think they wouldn't repeat their complicity in genocide, but these tech hoes will do anything.
Thank you for your testimony. Now we have Ezzedine Alsai, Michael Rabb, and Ryan Bennett. Do we have Ezzedine here? Then I guess we're going to Michael.
Stop the genocide. Condemn Israel. Good evening. My name is Michael Rabb. I'm a Boulder resident and a revolutionary for Free Palestine. I'm here tonight to ask City Council to pass a resolution condemning Israel's slaughter of the people of Gaza and demanding that the USA stop sending weapons and bombs to Israel. The whole world sees this genocide. It's been going on for 13 months. Israel has murdered more than 100,000 human beings. Israel is blocking food and humanitarian aid to the men, women, and children of Gaza. People of Gaza are starving to death. Most countries have called for a ceasefire. The United Nations has voted for a ceasefire and to provide humanitarian aid to Gaza. And here in the USA, more than 100 cities have passed resolutions calling for a ceasefire and an arms embargo on Israel. Here are some of the points to consider in your resolution. Condemn Israel for bombing civilians. Condemn Israel for blocking food and humanitarian aid to Gaza. Call for Israel to end its blockade of Gaza and release the 2 million Palestinian hostages in Gaza. Call for the USA to restart funding of UNRWA and immediately send food and humanitarian aid to Gaza. Call for Israel and the USA to pay reparations to the Palestinians and begin a massive rebuilding plan for Gaza.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Now we have Ryan Bennett, John Boylan, and Michelle Rodriguez.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. My name is Ryan Bennett. I'm a South Boulder resident, and today I'm representing...
Can you get into the mic, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry. My name is Ryan Bennett. I'm a South Boulder resident, and I'm here tonight representing the Reimagined South Boulder Rec Center Advocacy Group. Our group fundamentally believes that having a full-service rec center in South Boulder is a pivotal part of a healthy and dynamic Boulder community. And as a result, we have two priorities. One is to reimagine the South Boulder Rec Center to become a community hub for health and connection and wellness in the community. And two is to ensure that the current South Boulder Rec Center remains functional until a new South Boulder Rec Center is complete. Now, our group, we've assembled nearly 200 supporters that are passionate and really believe in this mission. and we're channeling our collective efforts to ensure that we can have a positive impact in the process moving forward. We look forward to having really constructive discussions. We've already met with Park and Rec staff and other key stakeholders in the community, and we genuinely believe we can be a collaborator to help achieve a great outcome for the community. Now, I'll say, as part of the assembling of this group, what's really stood out to me is the passion of the group. I've heard so many stories, hearing about a neighbor whose now grown children learned to swim at the South Boulder Rec Center, or someone describing how they transformed their health by being able to create a daily routine of going to the South Boulder Rec Center. There's so many amazing stories over the last 50 years of what this rec center has done. And so as we look forward and we move forward thinking about the process and what we can do to help, I'm really proud of the opportunity to be part of an advocacy group that can ensure that the South Boulder Rec Center has another 50 great years of having a positive impact on the community. And I look forward to the chance to partner with this group and many others to make that a reality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now we have John Boylan, Michelle Rodriguez, and Marianne Gatton.
Hello, my name is John Boylan. I'm here also to talk to you about South Boulder Rec Center, or SBRC, and its importance to South Boulder. I've been going there for almost every day for decades, and one of the main groups I see is retired folks. Women and men, spry to slow, in good health, not so good health. Many I see day after day. Some use the aerobic machines, others the weights, others take classes. But maybe the most numerous, at least it seems to me because it's my favorite, are the swimmers. There's the gentleman who was a doctor in Vietnam, think of that. The woman who made her mark in southwestern archaeology, the physics and engineering profs, atmospheric scientists, and more, all in their so-called golden years. They swim laps to stay healthy, to extend their lives, but it's even more than that. During COVID, when SBRC was shut down, many shifted to the Louisville Rec Center. They've told me about what a great facility that is, but how it just doesn't feel neighborly. Folks don't get to know each other. They arrive, they swim, they leave. In contrast, at the SBRC, there's a vibrant community feel and strong friendships that have developed solely because of this facility. People hang out at the pool, catch up, plan activities together, and so despite its condition, these folks have come back to the SBRC and they're very happy to be back. Fairview High also uses this pool. Kids show up day after day, filling the locker rooms and bleachers with their raucous chatter. They go through monster workouts that have really paid off. Fairview has had some of the best swim teams in the entire state. Think about how important this is for teenagers. They learn the value of exercise, teamwork, commitment, devotion to their teammates and goals. They're not isolated and on their phones. They're present in the moment, face to face. I could tell you a lot more stories, but my point is, for so many residents, the SBRC is a key part in what makes South Boulder a wonderful place to live, grow up, and grow old. Now the city's evaluating SBRC's future. This reimagined SBRC group aims to collaborate with the city in this effort. We have a lot of ideas, and we want to help you make it even better.
Thank you for your testimony. All right, now we have Michelle Rodriguez, Marianne Gatton, and Celeste Landry.
Okay, got to make this quick. I'm respectfully asking for further conversations regarding these concerning things. One being the homeless shelter admitting that they're spending 80% of their funding on staffing. They've relieved 3 of our major peer support this week for lack of funding, supposedly. Also, we had a confirmed 30 minimum people turned away from the shelter starting Tuesday night. In addition, we have this extreme weather criteria. Before I read that, I want to also talk about feet forward voting with $363,000 worth of monies and assets to run the last year and a half, and them merging. I have concerns about that. Extreme weather. When conditions meet the criteria below and the city of Boulder has the necessary resources, the city may also open an extreme weather shelter. An extreme weather shelter will only be activated when conditions are consistently expected to last a minimum of 3 nights, and there is a forecasted consistent daily high of 5 degrees or below when accompanied by heavy precipitation or forecasted blizzard. Heavy wind in excess of 30 miles per hour or 70 mile per hour gust or extreme winter weather watch warning, or a forecasted consistent nightly low of 0 or lower. Boulder County and all roads will help staff any future extreme weather shelters. All forecasts are to be provided 48 hours in advance and confirmed to be in effect. We need some answers. We got to do better than this. Memorial is on December 19th at 3 o'clock, the homeless memorial. We'll be memorializing average of 50 people a year for the last 4 or 5 years. I invite you guys all to come. You know where it's at. It's right across the street, December 19th at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Marianne Gatton, Celeste Landry, and Macon Coles.
Hello, I'm Marianne Gatton and a North Boulder resident. Good evening, City Council. I'm here representing North Boulder Alliance. As you know, our group has been advocating for a safe and thriving community for all. While we appreciate the attention that you and the Boulder Police Department have been giving to our concerns, we feel the city needs to do more to ensure safety of our neighborhoods. When North Boulder Alliance presented to you in May, our analysis showed a 40% increase in major crimes in North Boulder from 2022 to 2023. Our analysis today shows a 90% increase in major crimes from 2022 to 2024, with a 407% increase in menacing, 97% increase in assaults, 197% increase in obstruction of officers. In August of 2024, 2 months after the day shelter began operations, a high record of 80 major crimes were reported. That is in comparison to 28 major crimes in August of 2022. Since the opening of the day shelter, neighbors have witnessed fires being set, public urination, defecation, public intoxication, open drug use. We've had large groups of people passed out blocking sidewalks for several hours, especially on the weekends when the day shelter is closed. Local businesses and residents have reported increased property damage, vehicle vandalism, bike thefts, and disturbances. We urge the City Council to act swiftly and collaboratively to address these growing public safety concerns. We strongly advocate for the establishment of a police substation up in North Boulder. A substation would act as a deterrent and improve response time and enhance safety.
Thank you.
All right.
Now we have Celeste Landry, Macon Coles, and C. Breskel.
Good evening. My name is Celeste Landry. I'm a 30-year resident of Boulder, and I'm speaking today as an individual, not representing any organization. Today's consent agenda includes a policy statement on regional, state, and federal issues. One issue not listed that Mayor Brockett, for instance, has mentioned is proportional representation for council elections. I've got copies for you of a Littleton City Council letter to the Colorado Legislature. The letter asks the legislature to, quote, consider adopting and implementing additional alternative voting methods, unquote. Littleton, like Boulder, has its county clerks coordinate its municipal elections. Right now, Colorado county clerks will only coordinate plurality and instant runoff voting elections. Colorado Revised Statute 1-7-1003 allows for both instant runoff voting and proportional ranked voting for municipalities. But this year, when the town of Superior's Home Rule Charter Commission asked the Boulder County Clerk if they would conduct a proportional ranked voting election, the county clerk's response was, nope, we don't have to do that. Our city, Boulder, received a similar response when we inquired about an instant runoff voting election a few years ago, but Council Member Benjamin and I and others worked with the legislature to get enabling legislation so that the county clerk would run our new mayoral election. Whether or not you add this topic to your policy statement, I am requesting that the Boulder City Council send a similar letter to the legislature so that proportional ranked voting can be an option for Boulder again. I'd be happy to offer my expertise to write such a letter, And my second request is that you schedule a study session on proportional representation. Portland, Oregon just used proportional ranked voting this year to elect its council members. Thank you. And James Evans just showed up.
Thank you. All right, so James, we'll get to you in a minute. Our next three speakers are Macon Coles, C. Breskel, and Aram Binham.
Hi, I'm Macon Coles. I live at 17th and Mapleton. Apropos of the mayor and the Mayor Pro Tem's comments at the beginning, new responsibilities have fallen to the states and the cities, the counties, to protect people that are essential to the economic and social fabric of our communities, and yet vulnerable because of their immigration status. We cannot leave this to the vulnerable people to defend on their own. Next, I want to say a word of thanks to the City Council, to you 9 people. You work incredibly hard. You make yourself available to all of us. The breadth of issues that you face at any one meeting, like the 864-page packet for tonight, is just stunning. You receive more than 1,000 email every month. You prepare for meetings like tonight by working your way through these huge packets and talking to all of us. It may be hard for you to appreciate this, but the overwhelming majority of the residents of this community are grateful for your work. As voters, we place the governance of the city in your hands, and you're doing a great job. We know this because look at the vote on 2 of the issues that you referred to us for our votes. People have voted to increase the pay of council members. This is the applause for a job well done. People have voted to give you executive sessions. This is an expression of the trust that people have in how it is that you handle the issues for our community. With all the cacophony and dysfunction in our federal system and our national politics, the people of Boulder have let you know with their votes that they are very grateful for your
time
service.
is up, but thank
so
you so
am I.
much. All right, now we have C. Breskel, Aram Binham, and then we'll come back to James Evans.
Can you hear me? Hi, my name's Chrissy Breskel, and I live in South Boulder. I'm here on behalf of the Reimagine South Boulder Rec Center community group. As many of you know, the South Boulder Rec Center, with its exercise equipment, basketball gyms, and community lap swimming, is the heart of Table Mesa and the broader South Boulder community. But this is no surprise because it's smartly located in a large neighborhood that's heavily populated with seniors and kids, who are groups with great need for the indoor lap swimming and basketball gyms that the South Boulder Rec provides. And because the rec center is next to Southern Hills at Fairview, means Fairview swim team can practice next door instead of having to travel for daily swim practices. And it's also why the Mesa swim team, which is a kids' summer swim team, had flourished at the South Boulder Rec. Now, I know many seniors and also parents of school-age kids have already reached out to you about the importance of neighborhood lap swimming. So I just wanted to share a personal anecdote about the South Boulder Rec's basketball gyms. One of my kids is now a middle schooler at Southern Hills, and he regularly stops by the rec on his way home from school to play pickup basketball. He not only plays with friends, but also plays with people in the community whom he wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to meet. The basketball gyms are a safe neighborhood place where he gets exercise, connects with friends, and has unstructured fun. Because of this, I'm grateful for the South Boulder Rec Center and believe it is now and can become even more so a powerful antidote to the digital screen-filled world our kids are growing up in. This is just one of the many reasons why I'm excited for the opportunity to collaborate with Parks and Rec and you all to improve upon what's already great about the South Boulder Rec Center and to reimagine what more it could become. Thank you for your time, and thank you in advance for your support.
Thank you. Our last 2 in-person speakers are Aram Binham and James Evans.
Okay, good evening, Genocide Democrats. I've just one slide today to show what the city is profiting from. Though I again sent all of you links illustrating how Caterpillar's armored bulldozers are being used to murder and oppress Palestinians, Lebanese, and attack hospitals and UN agencies. Just today, or yesterday, there was a report of a bulldozer desecrating a body of a Palestinian after an Israeli attack on Tamun, just outside of our sister city of Nablus, which is the source of the image you see on the right there. And I encourage you to read one of the articles I sent you, which is about a Israeli soldier that committed suicide after witnessing the horrible things he did from behind the seat of his bulldozer in Gaza. I appreciate the rare dignity of response from Councilmember Shuchard last time I spoke about the city's $5.5 million still lent to Caterpillar so they can continue to make these weapons used to crush, drag, and maim Palestinian bodies. But I have to point out the incoherence of this response, which again claimed that the reason the city cannot act is a lack of resources. $5.5 million in genocide money, or $30.3 million in money for other companies profiting from apartheid and illegal occupation, is what I would call an excess of resources problem. I'm not asking you to research and attempt to articulate whatever warped sense of justice around Israel-Palestine you have that allows you all to continue on in silence and inaction. All you have to do is see these images, look how these bulldozers are being used, recognize it's wrong, and sell the damn bonds as your SRI policy dictates. Bam, $5.5 million to put towards homelessness crisis or whatever else the city needs. I'll even do the work for you. I bet you I can find you a bond with a better rate, as good a credit rating, that is not in a company or entity that is profiting from genocide. If you give me the details on Caterpillar
Your time
investments.
is up, but thank you for your testimony. All right, now we'll go to James Evans. No worries.
All right.
Can you bring the mic over, please?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening, members of the Boulder City Council. My name is James Evans, or as I'm commonly referred to as Radagast the Black in the community. And I'm here once again to speak on behalf of Boulder's homeless community and to address the impact of current policies on our most vulnerable residents. Current policies towards homeless individuals camping around Boulder are deeply concerning. Rather than being provided adequate resources, we are treated as a safety and sanitation issue, something to be managed and not supported. Sanctioned camping was discussed over a year ago by this city council, and a study was conducted in January 2024, again by this city council. And yet here we are in November with no progress. These approaches erode trust and only deepen the challenges we face as a community. Tonight, we are on the edge of one of the worst winter storms Boulder has seen in a while. And in talking with Officer Steinman today from the HOT team, I learned that All Roads has yet to offer any warming center services. Out of 160 beds, more than 100 are reserved, leaving fewer than 60 for a lottery system that fails everybody. By my estimates, over 500 people will be on the streets tonight facing injury and, God forbid, death. Boulder provides just enough services to look supportive on paper and not enough to make a difference. The result is that homeless people are pushed from place to place weekly. Those few who get housed are often placed outside of Boulder, reinforcing the feeling that the city doesn't want homeless people, whether they are currently homeless or recently housed. This feels intentional. The lack of affordable housing and housing subsidies sends a clear message. If you don't meet a certain income level, Boulder ain't for you. If Boulder truly wants to be a compassionate, inclusive city, it must do better. We need real, actionable policies, sanctioned camping, affordable housing that is accessible, housing subsidies that are available, and people aren't pushed out of a community that they call home. Thank you. I see the last 5 seconds to somebody else.
All right, we're going to go to our virtual speakers now, and our first three ones are Leslie Glustrom, Lynn Siegel, and Adeline Marquez.
Hi, this is Leslie.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much. And council members, thank you for doing this. I'm sorry I can't be there tonight. My name is Leslie Glustrom. I live in Boulder. And I usually love to come and watch you. I appreciate you all so much. especially now as we think about the future of our country and the hard work you do taking on the issues before our city, whether I agree with you or not. I'm just so grateful to you. And I'll be honest, I'm also really proud because I watch you all do democracy. Uh-oh, I'm going to cry. I watch you all do democracy in a way that I believe it should be done, where you can really have civil discourse. You can disagree, but do it in a reasonable fashion, at least to my experience. So I just thank you all. And then, as you know, I do a lot of work on climate change. I've spent 20 years at the Public Utilities Commission. I'm immersed in several big fights right now. But as you know, we face a decision in 2025, and I come when I can just to help you and remind the rest of the community that we do have an off ramp on our Excel franchise in 2025. And as we work on climate change, one of our goals is to electrify everything we can and run it off of clean electricity. We've made a lot of progress, but when you're playing monopoly prices for all aspects of your energy life, it's not going to work out well, as it turns out. So the question becomes, are there better deals to be had? And as I show up when I can, when I get selected to speak, we'll talk more about it. But we have communities all over Colorado who have had the ability to do what we might call go shopping for their electricity. And they've worked with other providers other than for those that were XL wholesale customers. They've gotten much better deals. And so we want to kind of think about our options, and 2025 will be a chance for us to do that. So again, I want to thank you all so much, and I apologize that I can't be
Your
there.
time is up, but thank you for your testimony. All right, now we have Lynn Siegel, Adeline Marquez, and Jessica Sneesby.
Yeah, my house is getting an energy retrofit for low income, and I'm really, really distraught about the way they're doing it. 12 years ago, I got into a fight with David Hashimanji with Energy Smart at the county. And it was over an energy retrofit thing where you give them $100 for an energy audit, and then they advise you out to these vendors. And one of the vendors was dumped, and I asked him why, and I was not told. And I asked the vendor, and it was because they were requiring them to do a solar install on a day that would have put them at risk for liability and damages. So I couldn't trust the city anymore. Now the city and the county are giving me this thing through CARE, and they are actually putting me up in a hotel to get me out of my own house where I don't want to go to the hotel. And the homeless people need the friggin' hotel, right? 30% down in funding and 30% up in clients. What is going on with you people? They're trying to get me to move. I can move my refrigerator out to access this new heat pump water heater in 3 minutes. To move the others, they're putting a hole in my living room wall with a door in it for access. On the other side is an entertainment center that's 2,200 pounds and is immobile, hasn't been moved in 25 years. But they say, oh, a refrigerator can't be moved. I can move my refrigerator out in 3 minutes. This is frigging unbelievable. I don't care about their restrictions of designated space for an appliance. I'll tell you what an appliance is, that 2,200 square foot thing. Okay, on Gaza, absolutely agree with the guy. XL, yes. 1840 and 1844, do not take those perfectly good buildings down.
Time
And
is up,
7th
but thank you for your
Broadway
testimony.
either.
Now we have Adeline Marquez, Jessica Sneesby, and Laura Gonzalez.
I am here to ask you to support CU students.
See, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I am here to press you again to pass a ceasefire resolution. Free Palestine, this is a local issue. Like my peers have stated, we ask you to stop investing in Caterpillar, cut all ties with corporations that are making a profit off of genocide. And CU students have asked the same from their university, who contracts with Lockheed Martin, RTX, Le Harris, Sierra Nevada Corporation, NSA, and their students are facing academic freedom being threatened. Recently, the CU Regents put a disgraceful motion redefining the Arabic word intifada, which means to be shaken or shake off, as an anti-Semitic word. Since then, there has already been an adoption of racist and anti-Arab definitions of anti-Semitism among the CU members. This is unacceptable. CU Boulder is silencing students to protect war criminals. 2 students were banned from campus for protesting Lockheed Martin and face heavy student code of conduct charges. I ask you to press them to drop those charges. All of this has been going on while North Gaza has ongoing bombardment, and you should stand up for humanity, because the way that Israel disregards the United Nations and is committing the most heinous hate crimes without any end in sight isn't going to stop until they are pressed for until the US does an arms embargo and stops funding this genocide and cuts ties with those corporations that are profiting. North Gaza is getting zero food, water aid in. They are being starved to death, burned, raped, bombed, you name it. We've been talking about this for forever. Please stand for humanity, and listen to what others have said as well.
Thank you. Our last 2 speakers are Jessica Sneesby and Laura Gonzalez.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jessica Sneesby, and I'm a student at the University of Colorado Law, and I have lived in Boulder for about 5 years, and I'm speaking today in my personal capacity. I appreciate the chance to comment on the construction ongoing at the intersection of J and County Road 119 for the Colorado 119 Safety, Mobility, and Bikeway Project. First, I want to express my support for the project and the overarching initiative of safely and sustainably connecting Boulder to Longmont through the corridor. But I have concerns about the current setup of the lane closures and the detours because of the construction of the project. When you're heading east on J Road into the intersection, the transition away from the closed lane is rather abrupt and, in my judgment, without enough indication for drivers to adjust smoothly. And this is especially challenging at night because the roads are poorly lit, which can make it difficult to navigate the sudden lane shift, especially when it's a road when folks are frequently driving 35 or more realistically 40 miles per hour. The intersection itself, without any construction, is already complex, being a double intersection, and the sudden changes only add to the confusion of drivers. After watching the webinar from August on the project, I learned that the corridor represents the highest crash corridor for motorists and the second highest for cyclists in Boulder. And anecdotally, that makes a lot of sense to me. And with the snowy and icy weather approaching, the setup becomes even more concerning. So I urge the council to consider implementing clearer, more gradual lane shifts or prompting the construction team to do so. And I also think it's warranted to add additional light sources at a minimum for the duration of the construction. These adjustments would greatly reduce confusion and ensure that the benefits of this project are not compromised by any short-term safety risks during the construction. Thanks so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Our last testifier is Laura Gonzalez.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Council Member Adams. Good afternoon, Council Member Folkers, and to the rest of Boulder City Council settlers. I am here not to actually ask you for a ceasefire or an end of the occupation, because you obviously won't. Nothing's going to change your mind. But I am here to make sure that it is recorded in history where you stood during this current Holocaust that is being paid by $1.6 million of our taxes without our consent. I am also here to make sure that it's on the record that you are complicit in genocide, not just by those $1.6 million of our taxes that you refuse to divest, but also the $5.5 million in corporate bonds issued by Caterpillar that you're investing on. And like one of the previous speakers said, that is violating the socially responsible investment initiative that it's on your damn manual and your guidelines. So you guys need to get educated on that. That is your job. You got an increase in wages. So not only are you stealing more taxes of our dollars, but right now you should be familiar with the SRI and you should know that you are violating this law. You are also violating domestic and international law by refusing to divest the $1.6 million and the $5.5 million that you have in this bonds of Caterpillar. Caterpillar, this things have been used to demolish the Palestinian bodies. And Weiner, you need to please listen because you're always on your phone when we're speaking. Okay, so listen, pay attention because that's your job to listen to your constituents, even if you don't agree with us, and stop your smile because you're not supposed to be smirking at us. Okay, that's also going to be in the record, and I'm going to make sure, and that's going to be your legacy, that your grandchildren know where you stood in this current Holocaust, that your grandchildren know that you did not care about the Palestinian people and you did not care about the people that come talk to you every single week and you only fucking smile. Fuck Netanyahu, fuck Israel, dead to Israel.
Time is up.
And dead to the
And all right, thanks to people who spoke. And I'll just call out that we're done with open comment for today, but I would appreciate if people not make personal attacks on council members or other members of the community in their testimony, at least in the future. I'll turn to staff for responses.
Thanks so much, Aaron, or Mayor. Appreciate as always folks that come out and share their perspectives with us. Couple of follow-ups. With regards to the previous to last speaker on the transportation issue, that particular 119 issue is actually CDOT's jurisdiction, but nonetheless, we want to make sure that we get those comments to CDOT and we will pass those along to our partner. So just make sure that we want to make sure that we will send those along. To Michelle, just thanks as always for sharing your comments. I had not heard about some of the information that you had brought forward today, so we'll be following up with all roads on some of those, so thank you. There's a lot of conversation today with our South Boulder rec centers and want to thank everyone who spoke about that. We can see the passion. We understand that. We have heard it. And mostly, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the acknowledgement that you've been speaking with our Parks and Recs folks. We know they too are very passionate about it. We know it is a valuable resource for community. We know that there is a future for recreation in South Boulder. We hear it. We know it. We know that it is also disconcerting when we can't say for sure what that's going to look like and how we're going to pay for it, but know that we know and we want to work with community about what that looks like. So please stick with us. Please continue to imagine with us. Follow our Future of Recreation Centers project. Sign up for updates and know that we will be continuing to engage with you as we think about what that future holds. So continue to work with us on that as we move forward. I'll say too, for our partner about North Boulder Alliance, thanks again. It was a pleasure to walk through with you as we were looking at that quite a few months ago. A couple of things on that. I think, Council, you have seen that we shared kind of a quick update on that in our IP. We're going to be continuing, as that memo says, to take a look at trends. It's a little too early to see what all of the impacts are. We will be continuing to look at what the updates are that. There have been recommendations about a substation there, and I'll say that, and I know that Chief Redford isn't here today. He's had another event, which is always fine for our department heads. There's not a need for all of them to always be here with us at every council meeting. I say that for good modeling for everyone. But I will say that we have been thinking about a variety of substations around the city, not just at North Boulder. As always, it is a matter of capacity and of need. We've been thinking about the university. We've been thinking about North Boulder. I want to give Chief Redfern the opportunity to be thinking about where that makes the most sense. And then we have to think about resourcing both in location and in funding and in staffing. There is a thought and a plan that he is thinking about how that may work with some of his other colleagues around the organization. And if there is something to share and when there is something to share, we will certainly do that with council and with community, but know that it is a consideration on the table. The other thing that I will say that we are continuing to talk with our partners at Boulder County. Not all of the area that we have concerns with obviously are within our jurisdiction. I actually have another meeting with our county partner tomorrow by phone to see if we can continue to partner with how we respond to some of the area that are in county jurisdiction, and with our sheriff partners as well. And so we're continuing to press upon that to make sure that we have better tools at our disposal on property that may not be in the city's jurisdiction. So again, just know that we are continuing to look at that. We will continue to work in partnership with our community, and it continues to be on our radar as we maneuver forward. So thank you.
Appreciate all that, Nuria. Yep. Teresa? Quiet in the audience, please.
Nothing from me. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, great, thanks. Any follow-up thoughts before we conclude this? I got Matt and then Taisha.
Thanks for everyone's open comments. We appreciate hearing from you. And I wanted to respond to a question with regards to our extreme, not respond, but get an answer from staff. With regards to extreme weather shelter, we are in a winter storm warning for 7 to 14 inches by Saturday morning. So I was just wondering where are we at, and what is our current sort of posture towards getting something like that up and running with this winter storm?
Thank you so much. I know every time we have cold weather, that is, of course, of interest to all of our community. I'm going to ask Kurt Fernauber, our Director of Housing and Human Services, to come up and share what we've got planned.
Is it? Kurt Fernauber, Housing and Human Services. So one of the changes that was done from last year is we increased the beds to 180. Last year they only happened on extreme cold weather nights. Now we've increased that number for every night. So it doesn't give us that flexibility to go higher, but it increases our capacity on each night. In this weather condition, well, we've also opened day services, so it's basically open 24 hours a day, but only through Monday through Friday. So that weather, if it goes through the weekend, the shelter would be opening during the day on the weekend as well.
So just to be clear, there's nothing. We're not providing any extra beds given what we do normally, given the impending critical weather.
That's correct.
Okay.
100 of them are already reserved.
Is that it? Okay. Taisha?
Yes. All right. Thank you very much for all of your comments. I especially appreciate those of you who continue to come and ask for a ceasefire or some kind of action towards the monies that we are giving through our tax dollars.
1 second, Taisha. We can't have blocking of the aisles for fire reasons. If you can please get out. Thank you.
No worries. And so I did have an opportunity, and I want to thank our finance team. I did have a chance to meet with members of our finance team who were very helpful in helping me to understand what our actual policies are. And unfortunately, yes, the city is invested in Caterpillar Financial Services Corporation. However, when we looked at the policy, there is exclusionary language that prohibits us to invest in weapons, except for those that are deemed for national defense. That is how we are not in violation, unfortunately. I'm just going by the rules, but I appreciate, and again, we're not allowed to have back and forth, and I literally had the same reaction because based on the video footage of what I'm seeing, that's in violation of U.S. policy. However, our investment policy allows us to invest in corporations that are contracting for national defense. And unfortunately, Caterpillar, is my understanding, is contracting under the auspices of national defense. So I just wanted to lift that up as something. However, I would like to implore our fellow council members to revisit our social investment policies because again, it's not in. What do we do when defense is not in line with our own policies? And as we look to our next administration, these kinds of concerns are going to continue to potentially be an issue, as we have seen in the previous administration, where laws were broken by the government in the administration, and thus would compromise our fidelity and our legal responsibility. So I do want to lift that up as a current and future concern, and I appreciate our constituents to hold us accountable, especially since we just had a declaration on trans lives, we had Indigenous Peoples Day, and then not to extend that when we have direct relation is unfortunate. So I did want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge South Boulder, and again, I agree and appreciate the coordination with the parks team. But again, I just want to lift up just the incredible cost of keeping that open. And again, we're talking about costs. And so again, I just wanted to remind folks it's not an aesthetic issue, it is really an age issue, and we need to figure that out, and the cost is going to be rather extensive. And then North Boulder, I was actually planning on asking for us to just talk. It is an information item where we did receive an update on the North Boulder Day Services Center, and I was planning on lifting that up for conversation later. So I will do that and I'll address that issue at that time. Boom, boom, boom. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm our funding for all roads continues at the same level next year as it did this year. Is that correct? That yeah.
Our funding, and Kirk, correct me if I'm wrong, our funding certainly continues at our levels, and in fact, I think we have slightly augmented. Is that correct?
So the operational costs are similar next year to this year. However, the day services will be open for the full 12 months next year versus a partial year. So there's additional funding there from the general fund. However, several grants have been brought in which will supplement additional services, which many have already begun related to day services.
So when looking at sheltering services and day sheltering, our funding is actually increasing last year to this year.
Yes.
Okay. In terms, and I know that that's not true of the county's funding, and I believe when we got that information, there was also discussion of beds being cut. Do we know how the shelter is going to be dealing with those cuts yet, or how many beds might be cut from?
So I know that when the shelter received the news from the county that they were receiving, I think it was approximately $300,000 less in resources, they were looking at ways to, looking at trade-offs of different impacts of that. And I know they have considered beds. I have not heard further how they are with that discussions with the county or with the impact on the services. We have been encouraging them and working with them to for that impact hopefully not to come to fruition.
Thank you. Will you let us know when we have clarity on what that will look like?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask about the construction safety on CDOT, on 119. I know we have construction standards. Would CDOT be required to follow the city's own traffic control and construction standards, or because it is a state entity, is that different?
I'm going to have to phone a friend and ask Valerie to come on down.
Hi, Valerie Watson, Interim Director, Transportation and Mobility. They have their own standards that they follow, but we coordinate very closely with them on projects like this and are happy to follow up with them and see what the current traffic controls are and look further into what the community member was reporting tonight.
Perfect. Thank you. I think I had one more. With the South Boulder Rec Center, Nuria, you mentioned the future of recreation. I know I looked at the questionnaire that was out a little while ago, and that wasn't totally satisfying in terms of what my options were or ability to give feedback. Can you maybe speak to what the next steps are for that project, or what sort of the full scope of that project looks like?
I know that some of that data is going to be collected as part of that questionnaire. I'm sure I can certainly put that out in hotline as I get some additional information from Parks and Rec. But the goal of that is that it will help inform renderings, cost estimation, and overall funding strategy. And we will put that out both on the website and we will bring that forward to council. But it is just early right now, but we're hoping that will help prioritize types of services, types of needs as we move that forward. But we will bring that forward to the public and to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Looks like that's it. Nope. Ryan and Tara.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. Many, maybe most of you come here frequently and spend a lot of time with us. And the election on Tuesday, in a way, makes me appreciate you even more, that you're here and are bringing forward ideas that we're working through, and in many cases, I'm not necessarily agreeing with, but we're working through this process of learning and doing our best, and I'm grateful for you to be here. I hear you continue to hear the perspective around Israel-Palestine and Caterpillar. I'm not in a different place on any of that today. And I want to express some solidarity with my colleague, Tara, as somebody who is sitting up here with the television cameras rolling and people talking at her. And if you picked on me, I might blush too. I don't know what I would do. But I don't think the comments directed at individuals about how they're comporting themselves up here are very helpful. And I do look forward to continuing to hear more on the policy and the ideas. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ryan. Tara?
Thanks, Ryan. South Boulder Rec Center, what is your group called? The Reimagine. I had the opportunity to walk around the lake with one of your members, and it was fantastic. I was able to reimagine. One of the reasons why I wanted to be on council was my love for parks, and especially that park. And so I'm very excited for the future, and thank you for coming, each one of you, for speaking and for putting this issue on the forefront of our minds. So you really appreciate it.
Thanks for that, Tara. I also had the chance to walk around and heard some fantastic ideas. So looking forward to that process of engaging with the community around the future of that area. All right, seeing nothing else, we will go to our consent agenda, please, Elisha. Oh, sorry. No, please don't. Please don't. You're cannot engage. All right, I'm going to give you a warning to please stop. All right, we're going to do a recess here in just a second. All right, we're recessing. All right, I'm going to gavel us back in from our recess and turn back to Alicia for our consent agenda, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Our consent agenda items consist of items 3A through 3C. Item D was removed, and a continuation through 3E to 3K.
Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? I got Lauren. Right. Taisha. Okay. Lauren's first.
I had a question for Ally Rhodes for item F for the revocable license agreements around Wonderland Lake Park. I just had a question about how I noticed that we're not charging a fee for these revocable licenses, even though these are encroachments of private property onto public land. And I was just hoping you could explain how we got there and if we have any concerns around that setting a precedent for a future action. Or maybe Teresa Tate or Mark Wolf could answer those questions.
Good evening, Council. Mark Wolf, Assistant City Manager. Just noticing Nuri wasn't in her seat. I think Allie's online, and we also have the project manager, Regina Elsner, who I believe is available for that question, Councilmember Folkerts.
I'm open to whoever makes most sense to answer it. Thank you.
Regina's here. We're going to let her take it, although I love Mark running to the dais and take it and kind of think we should just let him. But Regina's here, and she'll be able to answer your question.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for that question. I appreciate it. My name is Regina Elsner. I'm the Senior Manager for Natural Resources for Parks and Recreation, and I've been managing this project since its inception. I just wanted to share with you all. So this project was really fashioned as a pilot project for us because we hadn't previously done this kind of holistic encroachments work across a property. And so we were really viewing this as a pilot. And that is part of the reason we decided not to charge any fees with that related to that. And that's also why we don't necessarily have a concern about the precedent, because I think moving forward, as we think about these kinds of encroachments across other city lands, that would definitely be part of our lessons learned and something that we would likely shift and change in the future.
Thank you for that. I do want to flag that I appreciate all the work that has been done on this, but I will be voting against it because I think that if this were a different kind of encroachment, say a tent on public land, we would not allow that to stand. And so a fence, fencing off public land as private, to me, I think that this should go farther in terms of protecting the public realm for the public. Thank you.
All right, I had Mark and Taisha and Tina. Follow up maybe? So Mark, if you can hold on a second, Tina.
Yeah. Just a quick follow up. Was there widespread awareness that the property owners were encroaching on public land?
Again, Regina Elsner, thank you for that question. We became more and more aware the Wonderland Lake area was developed. There aren't a lot of property fences adjacent to the public property. So over a course of a number of years, there were questions about whether improvements were happening on private property or public property. And so we engaged in this process to look at those property lines holistically to identify where they were, where there might be these kinds of encroachments. We did work with we sent out mailers at the beginning of the project to notify all of the adjacent property owners that this work was happening. So they were all made aware of the project from the very beginning.
And I guess my question was more, do you feel that most property owners knew that they were encroaching on a public land? Or do you think some weren't aware, or they had purchased a property that had already encroached and weren't made aware of that at the time of purchase?
I would say the vast majority of folks that I spoke with had no prior knowledge. They did purchased the property with the condition that it is, and had no prior knowledge that they were encroaching onto that public property.
Thank you. And I have some friends who live up there, and they were all a little bit surprised. And I think the process has been great in terms of clarifying, because there are some interesting trails and boundaries. And so I personally think that it's when you're not aware that you're doing something, in this particular case, not having a fee does actually make sense to me. But, regardless of how people vote, just thank you for helping me with that question.
Mark?
I apologize in advance. I'm going to be betraying my ignorance here, because apparently I was not here when we discussed the Area 3 Planning Reserve Urban Services Study. So my first question is, what does it mean to accept that study? Is it an endorsement, or is it simply I don't know what that means.
I think we got Brad coming down to...
Come on down.
Yes, good evening, council members. Brad Mueller with Planning and Development Services. We also have Christopher Johnson and Sarah Horn, who have worked on this online. I will let them clarify it, but I'll just preface by saying that the comprehensive plan that defines the process, a three-step process for potential urbanization of the planning area reserve, is vague on that, on what that actually means, and if I can ask one of them to speak further on that point.
Sure, thank you, Brad. Christopher Johnson, Comprehensive Planning Manager. Good evening, Council. Thanks for the question. Councilmember Wallach, so the acceptance of the urban services study is essentially just acknowledging that work is complete. It isn't, the urban services study is not intended to be give any sort of direction regarding policy. It is essentially just a technical study to determine, what the range of possibilities could be out there, and related to that, the potential impacts in terms of offsite infrastructure improvements, costs, those kinds of things. So it is essentially just acknowledging, if you do accept it tonight, that step would be complete, and then that would allow for the public hearing to occur next week that we have on the calendar, with a joint hearing with Planning Board as far as what the next steps would be.
Okay, because as I look at those infrastructure costs, I am shocked, and that the concept that we might undertake $1 billion infrastructure expense, for that money we could pay for the entirety of the $300 million of capital expenses that we are unable to pay for today. The $300 million that are backed up in terms of flood mitigation projects. We could have the most robust wildfire resilience program in the nation. And I'm looking at this and going, we're doing all of this to develop, this acreage, and it strikes me as a misuse of our energies and our funds.
Do you mind if I pop in here, Mark?
What's that?
Do you mind if I pop in here?
You may absolutely pop in here.
So definitely hear your concerns. Just want to mention, we mentioned the public hearing that we're having next week. I think that is the forum where we'll be considering these issues in more depth, that we'll be hearing from the public about it, and then we'll also be making a decision after that public hearing about whether to proceed to the next step in the process. And if we say yes to that, we'll have to deal with these issues. If we say no to that, it's kind of off the table. So I think that's going to be a great opportunity for us to weigh in.
I am happy to defer this to next week, when I will say the same things.
Okay, very good. Did you want to chime in on that, Taisha? Sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
I would like to pull it from the consent agenda and have us vote on it. I have some questions. I have some questions. I can kind of do that now. It's not so much questions, it's why I'm going to say no. But it's actually not about that. It's about the technical study itself. And I really appreciate, Christopher, your use of the term, we are acknowledging that it is complete. And so, one, I want to thank you, Brad, for the opportunity for our conversation around some of the issues around the level of completeness, and specifically some of the concerns that I have around the lack of any kind of wildlife or habitat analysis as a part of this, as well as some of the trade-offs that were indicated related to our water use. In addition, the report specifically says that the long-term water analysis does not include considerations related to the Colorado River Basin or wildfires. In addition, the energy component talks about all electric, but there is no indication about how water will be used for the generation of electricity and where that water is going to come from. I also wanted to just lift up, we, as Leslie Gresham, and I apologize if I mispronounced your last name, reminds us that Excel Energy, that contract is about to come up. And so, again, just municipality and energy. And so that was also in my level of completeness. Lastly, two more things. One is the employment formula, and it was my understanding the employment formula was not inclusive of some of the new workforce issues related to generative AI and the impacts that's going to have on jobs across the socioeconomic spectrum. And then lastly, and one of my biggest flags is the lack of a agricultural component. Again, I know this is about our city services, but I just think it's very interesting that we are talking about open space and parks and commercial and residential, but we're not talking about where people are going to grow food, not just buy food, but grow food. And so for those reasons, I would like to pull it off the consent agenda and actually have us vote on it. Thank you. Do you have any responses to anything I said?
Yes, I certainly can, or if the
I
correct
don't know
format is
I don't know what the
after it's
protocol
pulled,
is, so.
so I'll defer to the
But I
order
wanted
in
to hold
which-
space because you were really gracious about
Yeah.
answering these questions that I had and letting me understand that, just some of the reasons why these considerations were not in the 1996 guidance that we have. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that now if this is
If
the
you wouldn't
appropriate
mind,
time.
I just would love
Yeah,
our colleagues
absolutely.
and audience to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate and acknowledge that any study is going to have limitations, and especially I appreciate your acknowledgement that this is working within the framework that was defined in the 90s as a way to determine what policymakers, future policymakers, your very selves, would make a decision about to open this area for urbanization or not. The good thing about the three-step process is it does open up the opportunity to pull in this feedback and incorporate that into the stages where there is decision making. To elaborate on Christopher's response, this is simply an acknowledgement that the study was done, and then next week would be the period at which the public hearing talks about whether to engage this needs assessment, which itself would be a years-long process in which some of these kind of questions can be defined and put into the future groundwork for a potential land use or sub-community plan for this area, which is the step 3. Those are important considerations. We talked a little bit too, for the benefit of others, about the non-city services and the potential implications around that, whether it's school service or postal service or commercial waste service, electrical power, others as well. So it's important to consider all those items, and those are mechanisms that come with the further planning process. Just to elaborate real quickly too on Councilmember Wallach's statement about the $1 billion, I do want to very briefly clarify that most of that would be captured through the developer's impacts or development impact fees, and we can answer those questions as we do prior to any hearing if folks want to contact us prior to next week.
And just another question for you. Just wanted to clarify that if we, and again, one, that we are voting on the level of completeness. That's number one. And number two, we are voting, and if we don't feel it's complete, then it doesn't go to that next stage. That
Correct.
was my understanding.
We would cancel the hearing next week.
And then the other thing is, if we did say no, we wouldn't necessarily have to wait 10 more years. there would be another opportunity to revisit this at the next Boulder Valley Comp Plan update in 5 years.
In 5 years, that's correct.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to pause on process here because we don't often pull things from the consent agenda. But for Teresa, from a process standpoint, could we say right now pause for a discussion on this item and have a separate vote on it and then finish out the rest of the consent agenda, or would you recommend something different?
So typically when an item is pulled from the consent agenda, you discuss it after a motion for the rest of the consent agenda. It seems to me you're well into this discussion, and so the rules provide that if you want to suspend your rules or the city attorney makes an interpretation of the rules, that you can do that. So I guess my interpretation in this moment would be you're pretty far down the road.
Yeah.
Might as well finish up.
Sounds good. So with council's consent, then we'll just now continue this pause, discuss this item, and then have a vote on it, and then proceed with the rest of the consent agenda.
Can I have a point of order question?
Sure.
Did I hear our city attorney that we would have to vote to suspend our rules to engage in that discussion now versus waiting at the end?
I gave you an interpretation, I think,
did.
that would allow you to move forward at this point.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, well, if you don't mind, so we're going to discuss this for a little bit and then have a vote, and I'm going to go ahead and call on myself because I also had a question around this item, Brad, which we highlighted a little bit before. But so we have 4 scenarios that were presented for the analysis, A, B, C, and D, and they had different amounts of residential and commercial and park space and all these kinds of things. But just wanted to confirm that those are not prescriptive, right? We can mix and match those different scenarios as we move, if we move further down this process. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor Brockett. And to maybe elaborate on that a little bit, really all of the different elements of the scenarios are variables that could be reviewed, and that's the benefit of a study as staff primarily uses this moving forward in order to support any policy decisions in the future. We're able to go in and look at these models and say, well, actually, if we pulled this lever on that level, and you can mix and match those up to the hundreds, but fundamentally that's right.
Okay, yeah, thanks for clarifying. So we're not going to look back on that and say, well, we have to do one of these 4. And I'll just put a comment for the record that when we had this conversation in our study session, I had requested that we have an analysis with less commercial space, and y'all did. That was done in scenario D, which was fantastic, but not in the other scenarios. So I just want to reiterate my point that if we do move forward with this, I would in general like to see less commercial space and a heavier tilt towards residential.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. And I think we also will parse what that bucket encompassed, which was things like institutional uses and others.
Great.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I see KJ, you had a comment you might want to make on this?
Yeah, thank you, Nuria. I did just want to maybe circle back to Mayor Brockett's question around the scenarios, and that they really are intended to be nothing more than just points upon a spectrum for us to do the math to figure out what what the potential impacts would be. They are not representative of a option or an alternative or a desired policy direction. They are simply just the inputs that allow us to actually do the calculation. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Understood. Thanks, KJ. And then just while I have the floor, I'll just make a quick advocacy point that I hope to see us accept the study tonight and move forward with the public hearing next week, where we'll be able to have a full consideration with the public of the issues and whether we want to take the next step in the process, because it is not a permanent decision, but a 5-year decision if we were to vote against this tonight. Thanks.
So just a clarification, are we talking about the study right now, or are we?
Yeah, we're discussing about whether to approve the study or
Okay.
accept the study.
Okay, but we could, so if I have a question, for instance, like I was surprised to see in option D that we would start impacting our water supply, that we may have to have more frequent water shutdowns. Would doing this study, in the next steps, would we be exploring how pursuing a dense option in this area might affect our ability to develop other areas of Boulder? Would it affect the water resources for other places? just from the more holistic thing, which is great that this is part of the BVCP so we can answer that question. But when does that discussion come up?
Yeah, I think I would answer that in a couple ways. Certainly, any new development, or in this case, contemplation of new development in the context of a single area, gets looked at in the overall picture of service delivery and service capacity. So that would certainly be done. But the benefit of having this study too, and to build on what Christopher was speaking to, is those kind of known entities identified at this stage allow us to then talk about what trade-offs exist or what solutions to those kind of potential problems might exist. Bear in mind, because of the step 1, step 2, the time that would take, step 3, and then just the pure process of individual property owners seeking annexation, we really aren't talking about a scenario where vertical development is likely before like 2035. So it's the time that it takes to kind of ask those questions and then answer them.
Any other comments before we move to a vote? Lauren?
As you know, I have concerns about how this services study was done, and I don't think that these concerns were adequately addressed. But with hesitation, I will vote to accept this study, even though I continue to draw significant issue with using city average data as a baseline for possible future development. Because if you look at our water usage per capita over the past 20 years, we have seen significant declines. That probably is because new code requirements require more efficient use of water and things like that. And I don't feel like this adequately captures that. And so while it does present a ballpark of possibilities, those all have, each possibility is still problematic in the same way. But I will trust that future phases of this project will be more thoughtful in how we are using the data that we have as a city, because as I understand it, we do have data around what the water usage is for newer construction, but it was not included in this. But that trust is thin. So thank you. And yeah, I hope we will move forward with this.
I got Nicole.
Thank you. And just thanks to staff for the additional time and discussion tonight. I just had a question. So this is a priority leftover from the last council. This was one of the few that carried over. And you know, I think things often change in hindsight as we're seeing where things are finishing up. And my question for KJ or Brad is really, you know, is this set in stone forever? Like moving, if we approve this needs assessment, are we moving forward with these numbers and that's all we'll ever do? Or is it something that will be open to change at future stages of the project so that we can incorporate some of these other concerns and any new information or new technologies or things that we're getting along the way?
Yes, thank you for the question. And we certainly, but the short answer to your question, Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem, is that these are absolutely not set in stone. And to elaborate on Christopher's comments early, this is not a policy statement. It is not a statement of preference. It is a continuum that is chunked into sections called A, B, C, and D, but really represents many points of variability that can be managed and thought about moving forward on any land use planning. Certainly appreciate the concerns, Councilmember, that you bring, Councilmember Folkerts, that not all issues were addressed. We did our level best to incorporate those, but understand that maybe that didn't hit the mark exactly, but also appreciate the fact that this is iterative and that we'll take those comments to heart from several of you and the good feedback, and recognize that leads into future opportunities.
Nicole, was that it? Okay, Taisha.
Just a quick question around the 1996 criteria. How does that get updated? Or that is really the crux of my concern, is that that criteria, again, that was created when I was in college, I'm 50 now, has not been updated in light and in response to our current climate, issues and climate reality and water reality, et cetera. And so I was just curious, again, is the Boulder Valley Comp Plan process an opportunity to revisit that criteria? Does it require an ordinance? Like, what is the, again, I hear the faith and all of the things, but to me, my concern is that we're going to go down that road and then get the analysis about wildfires and the Colorado River Basin, and then we've wasted a year, which was at the same time that we are planning, two other huge plans for our community.
Right. Well, I'll ask Christopher to elaborate, but I'll just briefly preface it by saying that the comprehensive plan update is an update of the whole plan, and the plan does consist of land use guidance maps, of policies, of city values, of the rules of engagement, including this one. So anything would be fair game for amending through this process.
No, but I'm talking about so that would include this 1996 thing, and no one has previously said, hey, y'all, let's take a look at this 96 thing.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. Christopher might have a little better history on that.
Well, we did tweak the rules at the last major update for the Area 3 planning.
That's true.
reserve
Thank you.
acceptance.
Yeah, there was some tweaking.
So
yeah.
it was looked at somewhat 8 years ago.
All right.
Little bit.
And again, I just,
That's right.
I really am
Thank you.
challenged by the criteria and am incredibly concerned about the amount of effort that is going to be used over the next year in light without having this type of data. Thank you.
Sure. Christopher, can you speak any more to the 1996 setting of the rules?
Yeah, I think I can just provide maybe just a little bit of context. I think it was 1990, maybe 1990 when it was initiated, but 1993, maybe if I have the dates correct, is when the planning reserve area, the 500 acres on the north side of town, was actually identified as the planning reserve. There was a study done to determine, where the city could expand at some point in the future. The procedures themselves of the identification of, what does it take to unlock the planning reserve? Those procedures, there were procedures established at that time, but then those evolved a bit. And then Mayor Brockett's correct that the most recent sort of 3-step process that really defined the urban services study to get the technical information, then this community needs step, which is what we'll be talking about next week. And then ultimately something called a service area expansion plan, which is step 3, which is essentially the equivalent of a subcommunity plan. That sort of 3-step process was established in the last major update to the comprehensive plan.
Thanks. All right, seeing no other hands, let's go ahead and go to a vote. Elisha, should we do a roll call on this one? What's your thought? What is required?
That would be your preference, sir, if you'd
Can
like
we make
to do
a motion
roll call,
first?
or
I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to do it first. So
Right.
I'll go for a roll call.
Okay.
So then, does anyone like to make a motion on the side?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to pass the consent agenda.
No, this is for just this one.
Oh, just
item.
this one. Oh, because we didn't separate it on the after.
So item
Okay,
3G.
That's right. We're all out of whack, aren't we?
And I was
all right,
going to
so I'll make a
ask
motion to pass consent agenda item 3G.
because I didn't remember, and I don't know if I missed it, a motion to remove it from the agenda.
That's why I was doing a full motion, because we didn't remove it.
I think that moment is past.
Okay. I was going to jump in there, but
I did look to the city attorney for guidance on our next step at that time, but you're right, there was not a motion, but I think we did effectively pull it from the consent agenda. So now we're having a vote on it separately. So we have a motion for item 3G. Do we have a second?
And the motion was made by Councilmember Benjamin, and the second was made by?
Second.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll start the motion for the vote on item 3G with Councilmember Shuhart.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Yes.
Councilmember Wallach.
No.
That was a nay, sir, I'm sorry. Thank you. Weiner.
Yes.
Adams.
No.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Folkerts,
Reluctantly, yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Consent agenda item 3G is hereby passed with a vote of 7-2.
Thanks so much. All right, so now for the rest of the consent agenda, did anyone have any questions or comments on any of the rest of it? I'll just call on myself and just making I appreciated Lauren's raising the question about payment on the Wonderland Lake area, but I did also very much want to appreciate the huge amount of work that the Parks Department has put into this over the last 2 years. It's been a can of worms that is now been addressed very thoroughly, so appreciate all of your work on that. Would anybody be interested in making a motion on this?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
We got a motion, second?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please, Alicia?
All right, sir, thank you. The motion to approve the consent agenda as amended that include now items A through C, E, F, and H through K will start with Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Yes.
Councilmember Wallach,
Yes.
Weiner,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Benjamin,
Yes.
Mayor Brockett,
Yes.
Councilmember Folkerts.
Yes, but no on item F.
Duly noted. Thank you, ma'am. Marquis
Yes.
and Shuhar.
Yes, and I'm also no on F.
Thank you, sir. So the consent agenda as amended previously listed is hereby approved with the duly noted noes to item 3G unanimously.
Those were to F, I believe, not G.
3F, that is true. Thank you. I was trying to keep up.
If you'd like to, go ahead, Matt.
Thanks for the opportunity. On item I, which regards to the serving of alcohol on our OSMP ag land, I just wanted to sort of make a comment that in doing so, it's a great thing for us to do for our farmers. But my just a comment on that we work to streamline the event process for them as well, much like we're trying to do in other places, lower that barrier of entry and make it as easy as we can to have community events on our ag land.
Duly noted. Thank you.
All right, can we go to our first call-up check-in, please?
Yes, sir, and thank you everyone for your patience on that one. Our call-up check-ins are item 4 on tonight's agenda. 4A is the concept plan review and comment for the redevelopment of 1840 and 1844 Folsom Street. The proposal includes demolition of the 2 existing office uses and redevelopment of the site with 183 dwelling units, including studio, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units for a total of 160,296 square feet. Parking will be primarily located below grade. This is reviewed under case number LUR 2024-00029.
Thanks. Any questions, comments, or desire to call this one up? I am not seeing any, and I don't either. I will just note that I thought the planning board had some excellent comments and feedback on this, and I hope the applicant will take those to heart. So I think we can move on to the next one, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next, we have item 4B on tonight's agenda. It is the consideration of a site review application for a 2,096 square foot 3rd story addition at 2040 14th Street within the downtown 3DT-3 zoning district. The proposal includes the construction of a 3rd story and a 100% vehicle parking reduction. The applicant has requested vested rights. This is reviewed under case number LUR 2024-00009.
Any questions, comments, or desire to call this one up? Lauren.
I had a question about what the path forward for this would be after this, and if historic or landmarks board will be looking at this at all, given its proximity to a historic building or part of it.
Good evening, Brad Mueller, Planning and Development Services. We have Adam Olger on the line to be able to, I believe, answer that question.
And he's an attendee. Perhaps somebody can promote him to panelist. Is anybody able to promote him? Great, thanks.
Adam, just let us know if you need a repeat of the question.
Yes, this is Adam Ollinger, city planner. If you could repeat the question for me, please.
I was just asking what the path forward next steps are for this project, if it will be going through any more review processes, for instance, with Landmarks Board.
Thank you. This would be the final approval if this item was not called up. It did go through Landmarks review. It obtained a landmark alteration certificate to perform the work that was approved by Planning Board back over the summer.
Thank you.
Good enough.
Yeah, I guess the comment that I will make is that I appreciated Planning Board's comments, particularly Kurt, related to kind of the complicated aesthetics of the upper floor. For me, it's particularly the black metal material doesn't feel very in line with the rest of the structure and kind of doesn't seem like it fits very well with the adjacent historic structure, but I don't know that I have the power to hold them to that at the moment.
Well, you'd have to call it up and we'd have to make an amendment to the site review approval. But you could go on record as making a formal request.
I would like to go on record as making a formal request for the applicant to just review that material choice for the upper level. Wow, my
Floor,
brain is gone.
residential unit?
The edge of the roof. Thanks.
Okay. And that, just to be clear, that does not have binding authority, but perhaps they will consider that. Tina, did you have something?
Yeah, I just had a really small question about the tree that I think the applicant is asked to add a tree or two. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, as exists, there are limited tree spaces along Spruce Street, along the north side of the property. The applicant would be filling in the existing bare tree grates with planting trees.
Okay, and is that typical in properties that are the downtown that the property owner pays for those? Is that...
I don't know about, maybe Brad can answer the typicalness, but with this project, this was something that came through and was deemed necessary and adequate by our landscape architect.
Yes, those are required as part of the code requirements.
Okay, and is this a net new living unit or just in addition to an existing residential unit?
This would be a new living unit. Currently, the building is just a two-story office building.
Yeah, I just, I'm really excited about this application. I think it's a really good use of an existing structure to add a residential unit with a setback. And so I hope that, I think this is a really great idea for adding and activating our downtown space. So, I hope it's successful.
Thank you. Any other comments on this one? Seeing none, no interest in calling this one up either, so can we move to our public hearing, please?
All right, so thank you. Tonight's public hearing is item 5A, and it is the public hearing and consideration of the following items related to a petition to annex a property at 2801 J Road with an initial zoning designation of residential-mixed RMX-2. First, we have the consideration of a motion to adopt Resolution 1355, which is setting forth the findings of facts and conclusions regarding the annexation. Second item is the second reading and motion to adopt ordinance 8659, annexing to the city of Boulder the property. And the third item is the consideration of a motion to change the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan land use map designation of the property.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to pass it directly to Planning Manager Shannon Muller.
All right. Good evening, council members. Can you all hear me okay? Great, thank you. I'm Shannon Muller with the City of Boulder Planning Department, and I'll be taking you through the staff presentation tonight. So again, tonight's item we're considering is a BVCP land use map change and annexation and initial zoning for the property at 2801 J Road. The purpose of tonight's proposal would be to allow the property to be annexed and have a land use designation to allow it to be developed for future residential development. So we'll take a quick look at the review processes, history of the site, some context, summary of the proposal, and the staff analysis. So again, this proposal involves two review processes. The first is the BVCP land use map change. This requires action by both Planning Board and City Council. Planning Board unanimously approved the land use map change at their meeting on August 27th. The second item is the annexation and initial zoning. This requires a Planning Board recommendation and City Council decision. Planning Board unanimously recommended approval of this item at their August 27th meeting with a couple of amendments which were included in the annexation agreement. And then it will be City Council decision tonight. So in terms of public notice, the property was posted and notice was sent to property owners per code. Some public comments were received on this item. These included concerns regarding transportation and traffic, density, compatibility with the area. Some comments were also received in support of the permanently affordable housing. And these written comments are included in the packet. Here's a quick look at prior reviews that have happened on this property. As far back as 2015, there's been applications for a concept plan, a prior BVCP land use map change request that was withdrawn, an annexation and site review also applied for and withdrawn. Most recently, in late 2022 and early 2023, there was a concept plan on the site, and that was considered by both Planning Board and City Council. At the time, a development plan was submitted that included a BVCP land use map change to MXR and an annexation and initial zoning of RMX2 were proposed, and those are consistent with what we're looking at tonight. That concept plan also included a layout and images of a potential design. It had 84 dwelling units and included both market rate and affordable housing. It provided fee simple lots with private streets. A concept plan is a time for identifying key issues and concerns. Some of the items that were noted at the time included concerns regarding the location of access that was taking access across a neighboring property to the east. There were concerns about compatibility of the design, some design concerns identified by staff, as well as a number of traffic and transportation concerns shared by neighbors. The feedback from the Planning Board at the time was supportive of the RMX2 zoning and wasn't concerned with the specific BVCP land use designation, but was more concerned with the future design. City Council chose to call up the concept plan at that time and supported both the MXR land use and the RMX2 zoning. As always, a concept plan review doesn't result in an approval or denial, but is meant to provide feedback to the applicant team. So based on that feedback, the applicant chose to move forward with the land use map change and the annexation and initial zoning that we're looking at tonight. If these applications are approved, then the applicant would come back for a future site review application that would involve a detailed review of a specific design proposal. So next we'll look quickly at the site context. Here you can see the property is at 2801J. It's currently in unincorporated Boulder County, just northeast of 28th Street and J Road. It's a 4.58 acre property, and the annexation would also include annexation of 0.28 acres of J Road right-of-way. Here you can see the property includes an existing church building, parking lot, and a telecommunications tower facility. The area is surrounded to the north and east by some low-density single-family and unincorporated Boulder County rural undeveloped properties. So here you can see some neighborhoods identified. Here are just some photos of the area north of the site, some rural undeveloped areas, the intersection of 28th and J. At the bottom are examples of some homes in the area. And on the right side are a couple of public buildings, the synagogue and churches south of J Road. Here are a couple of city plans that are relevant to this property. On the left, you can see the large park property owned by the city that's a ways north of the site in the planning reserve. The park is planned for future long-term needs with no current development plans. On the right, our transportation plan calls for a multi-use path that would connect through the site, which is shown in green. The transportation plan identifies that path that is intended to connect up to that future park space to the north. So here you can see the subject property is located in Planning Area 2 of the BVCP. This is the area now under county jurisdiction where annexation to the city can be considered. The property is also adjacent to Area 1, which is the land in city limits, as well as Area 3, the planning reserve. As we spoke tonight, the city is in the process of performing that urban services study. The existing BVCP land use for the property is public, which reflects the current religious assembly use. And the applicant has proposed MXR, mixed density residential land use designation. This designation is intended for developments that provide a substantial amount of affordable housing, a variety of housing types and densities, and could allow between 6 to 20 dwelling units per acre. Here you can see the existing zoning on the property. It's in unincorporated Boulder County right now, so the zoning is RR, rural residential. Across US 36 in the city, there's a mix of residential zoning districts, including RL1, RL2, and RR1. The proposal includes an initial zoning designation of RMX2, residential mix 2, which is intended to accommodate a mix of residential densities. The city's intensity standards allow a density of up to 10 dwelling units per acre by right, with additional density bonuses available up to 20 units per acre total, which can be requested through the site review process. The density bonus requires the site review criteria to be met and for increasing percentages of affordable housing to be provided in order to achieve those higher densities up to a maximum of 20 units per acre. This zoning also requires a mix of housing types be provided. That could be something like a townhome, a duplex, a triplex, or other housing types. So moving on to a little more about the specific proposal. So again, we're looking at the MXR land use and the RMX2 zoning and annexation. As part of the review process for these items, the applicant and staff negotiated an annexation agreement that would apply to the site and future development. So during the review process, a few items were clarified and incorporated into the agreement. The first item of note was requiring establishment of a new dedicated site access via dedication of the eastern 30 feet of the property as a new public right-of-way. This is to ensure that the impacts of the transportation improvements to serve this property are not a burden on adjacent properties in the county, and it ensures that public access is available to properties to the north in Area 3 should that property ever be brought into the city for future development. The agreement also clarifies the transportation improvements that the city can require at the time of future redevelopment. It establishes some compatibility standards to address the relationship of this site to surrounding areas, and it creates important standards for meeting community benefit requirements, where it requires 30% permanently affordable housing. And the proposed agreement also ensures that a site review process is required in the future and incorporates some flexibility and options for the project in that process to ensure that this proposal remains financially feasible. So I have 3 slides of annexation agreement terms, so bear with me. I'm going to go through these first ones here. This has to do with infrastructure and existing conditions on this slide. Here you can see that there's several right-of-way areas that are required to be dedicated. These include along J Road, along, along J Road in a couple of areas to do some cleanup as well as provide enough space for future streetscape improvements. It talks about the future public improvements that the city can require to J Road and US 36. It talks about some flexibility for a future multi-use path that we can either require to be constructed or we can request for money to be paid for that and held by the city for the city to build it later. And it again requires the dedication of that 30 feet of right-of-way along the eastern edge of the site. This agreement provides for the allowance for existing uses on the site to continue. The existing church would be allowed to remain until the site's redeveloped, and the existing telecommunication facility would be allowed to remain per the existing lease that's on the site. And lastly, it provides for the city's typical requirements, requiring the property to be connected to our wastewater utility and payment of standard fees. Here on this slide is a summary of the community benefit requirements that are in the proposed agreement. So consistent with BVCP annexation policies, this requires a provision of community benefit for properties that have substantial development potential. The agreement requires at least 30% of the new dwelling units on the property to be for sale, permanently affordable units, either through construction of units or through conveyance of prepared lots. Cash in lieu is not an option for meeting this requirement. The agreement also includes construction standards for those affordable units, things like minimum size, parking, design quality, pricing requirements to ensure that the proposed units meet the city's goals for middle income affordable housing, and also just ensures that folks that own the affordable units have the same access to amenities as folks that own a market rate unit. Here on slide 3 is a summary of the required compatibility requirements, density calculations, and some provisions for flexibility that were included in the agreement. Starting with design and compatibility, the agreement requires a future site review. This is to ensure that the future design be reviewed through that process. It outlines standards for the design of the 30-foot right-of-way along the eastern edge. It requires limitations to the number of stories for buildings along the eastern and northeastern property lines and requires sloped roof forms. This is to provide for additional compatibility with the residential properties nearby in the county. And lastly, the property would be subject to these design requirements and not to any future adopted area plans or design guidelines so long as a site review is submitted prior to 2027. This was to allow the applicant a period of relative certainty while their design documents are being prepared. Next, moving to density calculations. So through the review of this annexation, the applicant agreed to the dedication of that substantial portion of right-of-way along the eastern property line. So in acknowledgement of this, and in light of the fact that the site layout and the street layout is not yet known for the property, the agreement allows for the density of the site to be calculated based on the size of the site that exists today, rather than the calculation being reduced following those right-of-way dedications. And this is intended to acknowledge that important right-of-way dedication that's been agreed to, as well as support the financial viability of the proposal, which is dependent on providing enough market rate units to support providing those affordable units. And the last item is that the agreement notes, I'll jump down. The last item is that the agreement notes that there are certain modifications that can be requested through site review. It allows this proposal to request a modification to request private streets and request solar access modifications for zero lot line development, such as townhomes. All right, so at its public hearing on August 27th, as I mentioned earlier, the Planning Board unanimously voted to approve the land use map change designation. The Planning Board also recommended approval to City Council of the annexation and initial zoning. The Planning Board recommended 2 changes to the annexation agreement. They recommended to strike the requirement that would have required shared usable open space to be located near the eastern property line. They wished for the location of usable open space to be determined at the time of site review. They also recommended reducing the maximum market rate unit size that's in the agreement, reduce that by 500 square feet. And they felt that this would be more in line with the BVCP policies. So staff and the applicant did incorporate these amendments into the final annexation agreement that's in the packet tonight. In terms of future reviews, again, the site would need to come back for a future site review where it would be reviewed against the site review criteria as well as the annexation agreement, and would then proceed forward with all of the technical reviews. So lastly, just moving into a quick summary of the staff analysis that was in the packet. Staff reviewed the proposal against state annexation statutes and found that the application is consistent with statutory annexation requirements. Staff reviewed the proposal against BVCP policies and found it to be consistent with many annexation policies, in particular housing-related policies, where the proposal creates opportunities for permanently affordable housing, supports a mixture of housing types, and requires integration of affordable housing on the site. Staff reviewed the BVCP land use map change that's proposed to update the land use map designation from public to MXR. Staff found the proposal was consistent with the criteria for the land use map change as listed on this slide. This includes consistency with BVCP policies, ensuring there are not cross-jurisdictional impacts, ensuring that it doesn't materially affect land use growth projections, adequacy of urban services, the CIP, and doesn't change the Area 2-3 boundaries. And lastly, a zoning district must be established when a property is annexed. So again, staff reviewed this, presuming that the MXR land use designation would be approved. The MXR land use designation, again, is intended to provide for affordable housing, a variety of housing types, and density between 6 to 20 units per acre. So the review of the proposed zoning found that the proposal will help achieve the affordable housing stipulations of that land use. It provides a density in line with what's called for in that land use designation. And generally the RMX2 zoning district, as described in the packet, has typically been used for annexations where a substantial amount of affordable housing is proposed. So staff found the proposed RMX2 zoning with its emphasis on affordable housing was consistent with the MXR land use. So that concludes the staff's presentation, and we have these 3 recommended motions of approval, and I'm happy to take any questions before I turn it over to the applicant.
Thanks so much for the presentation. That was very thorough and well explained. Questions for city staff? I've got one, but Matt, you go ahead.
Yeah, my question centers around, and it's an interesting provision about cash in lieu is not an option for meeting the community benefit requirement. That's usually not something, it seems a little non-standard for how we normally operate when we're dealing with affordable housing requirements. So just sort of curious as to maybe why that was done.
And Matt, do you mind if I add to that question?
Please.
Because I've been wondering that too, and been wondering, so there's the 2 options that are provided for them constructing the on-site affordable or deeding the lots to the city. And my question and concern is, would the deeding the lots to the city provide a kind of equivalent or better affordable housing benefit to the city as if they constructed it, or if we did cash in lieu, which is sometimes done? So maybe you could elaborate on all those things, Kurt. Is that all right for add-on?
That was going to be my follow-up question.
There you go.
Thank you for those questions. Kurt Fernhaber, I support Housing and Human Services. Annexations have been one of our best tools for getting affordable home ownership, and it's very common for us to not allow cash in lieu within annexations, and the reason for that is that it forces a particular outcome that we're looking for, and the 2 options that are in front of you are 2 options that we likely wouldn't get on a development currently within the city limits. So to shift to Aaron's question, So if I'm correct, the question is there's two options there. Which one do we prefer, or how does that relate
Or
to?
would they both provide a similar affordable housing benefit to the city?
Yes. So they would both provide 30% affordable housing as a minimum. They would both provide home ownership. What we have found is that developments that occur after annexation sometimes struggle to complete the affordable housing component, and having two different options gives the developer further choice in how those will be accomplished. Land dedication is an approach which is currently part of our inclusionary housing ordinance, and in this case, providing this number of units, this number of lots as an option is a significant opportunity for the city that we don't often come across. And we have also been, I think this annexation conversation has probably been going on for, I think, about 5-ish years. And during that time, our Boulder Mod facility has also been completed, and we have shared potential designs with them along the way. So there's also partnerships or possible partnerships there. It also gives the city, while the city would own the land, our department would have opportunities to look at different approaches to accomplishing that. So having control of the land, I think, is critical versus simply having the developer making those decisions.
And just to follow up, because Kurt and I had a conversation earlier today, but one thing that you highlighted was the value of a finished lot versus bare land. So maybe you might address the benefit from that.
Sure. And I think, some people in first reading were concerned about simply a dedication of land, but a buildable lot has a lot to it more than just the land. The developer is paying for this process right now. They'll be paying for the entitlements of the site, for underground infrastructure, and those costs are included in that dedication of that land, which significantly helps in sort of the financial approach to accomplishing that housing.
Thanks for that. Mark, did you have a follow-up?
Would it be correct to say that if we receive a dedication of the land, the cost to construct the units will be our responsibility?
It could be our responsibility. However, if you look at the what that is offset with is the sale of those units. So those units are at middle income prices, and so that there's a cost recovery in that approach as well.
Is that going to be a full cost recovery?
We don't know at this time, but currently the cost to build without the development and land costs is relatively close to middle income prices. However, this will be a few years in the future as well, and we'll know more through a site plan application as well.
Because as I look at it, it seems to me that if the owner does a conveyance of the lots, my guess is he might well have a tax break, a tax deduction that he can claim for that dedication, and in effect shelter some portion of his income from the sale of market rate units by doing so, and offload to us the responsibility and the expense for actually constructing them, in which case if that is correct, his financial obligations are relatively low, ours are higher, and we have market risk, in the sale of the units. And I'm wondering whether that's really a substantial community benefit.
So I wouldn't be able to comment on the tax advantages to the developer. I would see that as a cost to the development. I think that's how other developers have approached it. However, I think in what we have looked at is that the community benefit is substantially higher than if it were in the city and going according to the inclusionary housing ordinance.
And what will be our source of funding to build those units?
It would be our Affordable Housing Fund. We could also bring in a developer like Thistle, who would get a construction loan, as any other developer would, and recover that through the sale of the units.
Or potentially partner with, say, with Habitat for Humanity, who would bring volunteer labor to, and perhaps some other financial resources.
That's correct. And I think what we're seeing now with those types of units is that the cost is pretty similar or slightly lower than the middle income pricing.
Have we even done an appraisal of what that land might be valued at, so that we have a sense of the dollar value of the community benefit that we are receiving?
I'm not aware of an appraisal that has been done, but I think if you looked at other affordable housing developments that I'm more familiar with, which would be projects like BHP would do, which would be rental, higher density. Land is typically about $100,000 per door. The development costs are probably another $50,000 to $70,000 per door on top of that. So it's a pretty significant portion of the cost of providing that housing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, if we could invite the applicant to come up and give a presentation.
Short person adjustment. Are we ready? Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Margaret Freund, and I'm the developer and applicant for this annexation request at 2801 J Road. I own and live in a house in Newlands here in Boulder. I think we all believe in the overarching benefits of mixed income communities. Certainly we need middle income and missing middle housing here in Boulder. At Call Up, Council unanimously supported the concept plan that led to this annexation application, with MXR land use, RMX2 zoning, as well as the density, compatibility, and the plan that we presented at concept. Some of you may recall the concept plan that we presented would work from a development perspective and bring community benefit to Boulder by providing as much for-sale middle-income family housing as possible. As we understood from housing staff at the time of the concept call-up, the 34 permanently middle-income for-sale units proposed in our concept plan equaled the total for-sale permanently middle-income units in the city of Boulder. We're back before you tonight seeking your approval of our annexation, which is supported by staff with MXR land use and RMX2 zoning. This is an annexation without a site review, and once annexation is approved, a site review application will be submitted. We used the concept plan as a guide for the annexation negotiations to make sure we could accommodate planning board, council, and staff requests and still fit in the housing. We increased the open space and centered it to create a gathering area, created Wunderf-like paving at the streets between the largest open space areas to further enhance the pedestrian feel, and added a 30-foot right-of-way at the east. While not included in the annexation agreement, the updated plan shows how we can preserve the density with almost twice the required open space while accommodating these requests. The annexation agreement before you for approval preserves the ability to reach the level of density presented in the concept plan to provide the greatest amount of deed-restricted and missing middle income housing. The agreement requires the housing be for sale. We've agreed to dedicate a 30-foot right-of-way at the east edge of the property so the city can eventually have a collector street that travels north from J Road to the planning reserve. We will build a portion of this collector that runs along our property where we have deeded the right-of-way to the city. The annexation requires 30% deed-restricted middle-income units, combined with an additional 10% to meet the requirement in RMX2 zoning for the density bonus. This is a total of 40% restricted middle-income housing. We can build the restricted housing simultaneously with the market rate housing, or we can deed the land for the restricted housing to a developer like Habitat, and after installing the utilities, curb, gutter, and streets, build and sell the missing middle market rate units. This is a solution we came up with in conversation with Boulder Mod and the Housing and Human Services Director. The Holiday neighborhood deployed a similar strategy. In our discussions with Habitat, for example, they have expressed a desire to use the new modular home facility. They might have other projects in their queue when we begin ours, and so they may start building after we begin or simultaneously if their pipeline allows. This allows the missing middle market rate units to come online without delay. After learning about some of the challenges in the Holiday neighborhood, at Concept Plan we talked about the possible benefits for homeowners from a fee-simple structure which can provide lower reserve costs by allowing homeowners to do some of the required maintenance themselves, such as painting. Holiday was also adjacent to rural land when annexed and was deemed compatible with the surrounding context. To address some of the challenges to the affordable housing homeowners who live in Holiday, this annexation agreement provides for fee-simple ownership with private or public streets. Staff agreed to calculate the density for the unit per acre calculation prior to the dedication of streets or right-of-way, that is on the gross land area. This means it is possible to make the streets public and preserve the density with a fee-simple structure. The public street opportunity further lowers costs to the homeowner, and with flexibility in the street forms, the fee-simple and public street approach can lower cost of development to help keep the missing middle housing accessible. It also helps better integrate the community in the overall fabric of the city by eliminating the boundary between public and private. We appreciate that staff did this, and they seem willing to make the necessary street modifications in site review to preserve a parking plan without parking lots and to have the streets be public while preserving the density. The annexation agreement allows up to 2,500 square feet for the market rate units unless the total number of approved units drops below 78, in which case the maximum allowable unit size is 3,000 square feet. Planning Board supported these numbers, and this is an example of what is needed to keep a development viable when density may be reduced. The annexation agreement provides for the satisfaction of all transportation, fire, utility, and drainage requirements, as well as off-site street improvements and utility connections, all of which will be worked out in more detail in site review. The city can elect to have us build a portion of a proposed multi-use path or collect our contribution for the cost to build it so they can adjust the location as they work through the development of the planning reserve. Although Council unanimously supported the MXR land use at concept call-up, initially, staff did not. To satisfy staff that the compatibility requirement was met for MXR land use, we agreed to limit the housing to 2 stories on the easternmost edge of the site and the east half of the northern edge, where the site abuts the planning reserve. We also agreed to sloped roofs. The 30-foot right-of-way for the collector street can accommodate street forms that avoid the need for parking lots, and also provides some front door parking for the deed-restricted middle-income housing. Tonight, we ask you to approve the annexation agreement. Once the annexation is approved, the final design will be worked out in site review, and you'll see it again. We hope all the work done with staff in the annexation negotiation process to preserve the density intent of the concept plan will help expedite the site review process once annexation is approved, so we can get to building this housing as soon as possible. I want to speak about the timeline. We submitted a pre-app for this concept in March of 2022. a concept plan in August of 2022, which was called up and heard in February of 2023. We submitted an annexation application in April of 2023, and after 2.5 years, we are here tonight. While we believe there's a lot in the annexation agreement that should help expedite the site review process, we know it could be up to 2 years in site review before we can file for tech docs, then for permit, etc. That's another minimum of 3.5 years of process and equates to at least 6 years until construction can begin and a decade or more before these units go up for sale. This seems like a very long time to make housing a reality when facing a housing crisis. We're happy to answer questions, and we really look forward to your comments.
Thanks for that, Margaret. Point taken on the length of time things take here in the city of Boulder. Any questions for the applicant? Lauren?
I was wondering if you could provide a little bit more detail, maybe around, I mean, I remember when this came to us for concept plan review, and it has been a long time. If there are any specific hurdles that you faced along the way that we should be aware of, I would be interested in knowing that. Also, if you have any thoughts about ways in which we can streamline the process moving forward, I would be interested in hearing that as well.
Although that might be a good offline conversation or an email to council giving us all that information, but
fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to send an email. I'd be happy to do that. I will say a couple of things. I think it would help for staff and council to talk about compatibility and what that means, because there was a disconnect in this process. It cost us 7 months. So I think council's the policymakers, but staff are the gatekeepers, and they both feel a big responsibility and obligation. And so I think that would be a beneficial conversation, and to get some clarity around that. Are you still trying to be compatible with the rural land in the county that you're adjacent to before you come into the city? Or are you, as was commented, I think by the planning board when we came up for concept, are you trying to be compatible with what you're envisioning for the future to address housing? So I think that would be, that would probably help everybody, all of us that are involved in trying to collaborate. And then, you know, these processes I develop in a lot of different municipalities, and this is only San Francisco and Manhattan compared to this town. So I would encourage you to find ways to, you know, I mean, staff would know better than I would what that could be. I know in some places you're given an opportunity to get in the room with everybody on staff who makes a decision about a different aspect of your, it's like a pre-meeting that you get to have, and you get to talk about it and work through things, and you get a lot of great information that saves you a lot of back and forth. So maybe something like that.
And I appreciate those thoughts. I mean, we are tonight considering this specific application, but I'd love to hear follow up with an email with more thoughts.
You know, we're happy to do that. We'll put some thought into it.
Appreciate that. We got something else for you from Mark.
Yes,
a few moments ago, you made a comment about something that threatened the project viability. How do you define that?
Well, I'm a small developer. I have to get a bank loan to do what I do.
No, I understand.
So the viability really depends on the numbers. And I heard your question earlier to Kurt, you know, about the deeding of the lots as opposed to the constructing. So if it's okay, I have a couple things I could say that might help you better understand how we got there. One thing is, it's hard to find I don't have an embedded construction arm. I'm a developer. here. I do in Virginia, but there are, you know, people here in town who have both. They develop and they have then their own embedded construction arm. I think for them, it's probably a lot easier to build both market rate and either middle income or affordable homes, and do it in a way that they can afford to do it financially. So we have been talking to Habitat, and we have been talking to the inclusionary housing folks. You may remember Michelle Allen, and it's been many, many, many years that we've been trying to get this project to fruition. So for us, we envisioned a partnership with a Thistle or a Habitat or maybe Housing Partners or someone like that who could build the affordable piece. That's what they do. That's their bailiwick. They know how to do it. They have, and we actually used in the concept plan a program from Habitat to design that piece of the concept. So that's why that's in there. And I can tell you, given the cost of land here in Boulder, that by the time we get utilities connected, which is, there's a couple of options for that on this site, but it's tricky and it's expensive and it's not, and there's off-sites, which are, you know, right-hand turn lanes and left-hand turn lanes that are not on our land, which is an unusual cost to this particular endeavor. And so at the end of the day, Kurt was spot on when he said the cost that goes into bringing the utilities in, we're bringing them into the site, we're putting the roads in, we're doing the curb and gutter, we're grading the land and getting it ready to build. It's a lot of expense. So the land is very valuable, and I think his estimate was low on a per door, you know, cost if you add it all together. So I do think you're getting a significant amount of community benefit, particularly when we add the 10% for the density bonus that we'll be seeking in the RMX2. So that's 40%. That's 34 restricted middle income, either homes or lots. And as he said, you know, the goal of building the homes, whether you do it as the developer or whether you do it as the city or whether you do it with Habitat, is to be able to sell them. In my conversations with Habitat, they said they can build those homes and break even. They can sell them to recoup the cost of the construction. So, and they're not for profit. So that's why, you know, I'm not a not-for-profit, and so that's why, for me, as a small developer, that was a very helpful way to ensure that we really had a chance to do this.
Very good. All right, Tina?
Yeah, and it's been a long process. Do you regret starting this project in Boulder?
I love Boulder. No, I try not to have regrets. I mean, there are things I regret. Some things that happened this week I regret. But no, there are certain things that people attribute to the personalities of developers, and one of them may be that nothing ever happens fast enough. So it's a part of my practice to work through this process, and I've been really grateful this round at the level of collaboration that we've gotten from particularly Kurt in inclusionary housing, Michelle before him, Sloan, Shannon, Hella, everybody, you know, has, would I have liked that to happen faster? Sure. So I think one of the other perils of the timeline is that the market turns in different directions. And so it can really imperil getting this housing online for us. You know, we're taking bigger and bigger risk the longer and longer it takes. But this is the same for the city, you know, because you really want this housing and you're really investing. So do I regret it? No. Do I hope that we can move through the next parts a little faster? Sure.
Okay, fair answer. All right, I think that's all we got for you. Thanks for that,
Okay,
Margaret.
thank you.
And we're now going to move to the public hearing. So we have two people signed up to speak, one in person and one virtual. We'll start with our in-person speaker, which is Robin Kuby, when she can get to the mic.
Well, now I can feel like I'm going to be Debbie Downer here, but my name's Robin Kuby. I've been lived in Boulder for for more than 40 years, and I've been a real estate attorney here for 39 years. And so I am supportive of this project, and I'm supportive of there being affordable housing on the project, and 40% or 30%, whatever, would be awesome. I am the person who raised this issue regarding the compliance with the exclusionary housing ordinance and this dedication option. And so what I would like to point out to you folks is that some point in 2024, and I think it's this spring, that you guys added a new option within the exclusionary housing ordinance at section 91310B3, which allowed for the dedication of the land. But it also required that there be a payment of a delta, if there was any, between the value of the portion of the land that was going to be contributed for affordable housing and what the developer would pay through the exclusionary housing ordinance. That's what your statute, the ordinance, says. So my complaint here is kind of twofold. One, you have removed, for no apparent reason, that obligation to pay the delta in this case. And two, the language in the dedication portion of the statute of the ordinance allows the developer to just dedicate the land to the city, and the city has the obligation to take it. There's nothing in there about agreements with somebody else. So if, despite all the best efforts of everybody, there's no habitat that's going to come in and be able to do this, which frankly Ms. Freund represented at an earlier meeting for planning board, that it didn't look like the schedules were going to work for that. But in any event, she may very well be able to find somebody who can partner and do that construction. But there is nothing in the agreement that requires that to happen. So that's what the concern is that I'm raising. And is this an exception to a brand new ordinance, part of the ordinance, that you folks want to undertake at this time? And will it be something that other developers who may not have the history and some other things that Ms. Freund has, will they want that same thing? And so that's really the issue I'm raising here. And is this going to be a conscious decision that you folks make? And if so, what's the basis for that here? So I'll shorten anything else I might want to say tonight, because I think it's been covered in all kinds of other ways. Except, oh no, I do want to address one other thing. Her comment about the compatibility. Oh, no, my time's up. So we're done.
All right, thank you. And our one online testifier is Lynn Siegel.
Where's my timer? Oh, there it is. Yay. Dare I ask if that's inclusionary housing, not exclusionary housing? I guess I don't dare ask that. Doesn't someone in this room know if it's inclusionary or exclusionary housing? Okie doke. Well, that means nobody knows much of anything, do they? The last thing we need in Boulder is more housing. No annexation. No zoning changes. Where's the services? Yeah, that's very funny, isn't it, Tara? You laugh at Gaza and you laugh at this too. I'm glad you've got a good smile on your face. It looks very nice, at least. We've got CU South, we've got the Millennium, we've got Geological Services, or Geological GSA, the McKenzie Junction project, the housing in the middle of 3 highways, Papelios, Hyundai, Diagonal Plaza, Coburn, Macy's. Yesterday, last night we had 7770 Broadway, which used to be many years ago when you were children, Mark Resin trying to get it to be the homeless shelter. Well, it was just given up to the developer from 40 units to 170. We do not need more housing. It does not relieve housing to give across the street from CU more housing at 777 Broadway. And it takes away our valuable resource of the Hobie Wagner architecture of this space, and the only sister to the other project that is demolished at Broadway and Baseline on the southwest corner, Western Resource Advocates Water and Land Fund. So we've got nothing left for people to come to here, except if they want to do housing tours to see all the new housing developments. We've also got Planning Reserve coming up soon, right? This is a housing shitstorm, a housing fun fest. This is not okay. The more housing, the more jobs, the more jobs, the more housing, the more housing, the more jobs. The more need for services, services that don't pay good. So then we need more middle income housing, low income housing, which we don't have. So stop already. Stop.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Thanks to the people who came to testify, and bring it back to City Council for discussion of the three potential motions in front of us. I will note that the program is called Inclusionary Housing. But who would like to open up our discussion? Follow-up question, Lauren?
I had a follow-up question for Kurt, and that was about how much our typical middle income housing units cost the city to create. It's already
on. Thank you for that. So I'm gonna shift slightly. I'm trying to answer this, but so one of our most successful program right now for creating middle income housing, and I think we're creating 7 units this year. We've been creating about 5 per year. Is we purchase market rate condominiums. We put resources in them to bring them up to higher energy standards, or different needs that they may to get them up to a good construction standard. We turn around and sell them at a loss, at a middle income price. Those units are costing us, I think it's about $150,000 to $180,000 per unit. So that's sort of the delta between the cost of that approach and the sales cost.
So even if it wasn't entirely cost neutral to develop and sell this housing, it would still be by far the most affordable way for us to do middle income housing that we've sort of had an opportunity to do in a long time.
That's correct. And then I'll say one more thing. So when our inclusionary housing ordinance was updated almost 2 years ago, we had a study done on sort of that question. And the study at that time showed that for a developer, it cost about $300,000 to $400,000 per unit to create middle income housing. That's the delta of the loss.
Thank you.
And if I could make one more statement,
very
quickly. So through an annexation, annexation is an agreement between parties, and inclusionary housing ordinance can work as a base for working off of, but inclusionary housing ordinance does not apply to annexations. Thank you.
Okay. I can get us started if I don't see anybody's hand raised, so I can get us going here. I'll just say I am in favor of the proposal currently in front of us and the three motions that we've got here. I appreciate the long road that has been followed to get to this point. I do want to appreciate Ms. Kuby's activism on this point, because I did do a deep dive into the affordability of this project because of that, and had a long conversation with Kurt and several emails back and forth, but have been convinced that the lot dedication provides a kind of sufficient and equivalent affordable housing benefit, since it's the finished lots, and actually would tie in incredibly well with our new Boulder modular home factory production and our partnership with Habitat for Humanity, which I hope could be utilized here. So I think we haven't had integrated, affordable, and market rate ownership projects hardly at all in town. I live in the Holiday neighborhood, which is the last time we got a significant project like that. It's a phenomenal way of living with that kind of mixed income, affordable and home ownership. So really excited to see this move forward and hope we can approve this tonight. Yep, Mark?
I am also going to support this because of the need for the housing, but I would hope and expect as we move forward that we get an analysis of how much we are out of pocket on the full expense of building this house after receiving a developed lot, less the expected revenue we would see from selling it. I know that Boulder Housing Partners uses about $400 per square foot for the hard cost of its construction. That means if you're building a 2,000 square foot home, your hard cost is going to be $800,000. I know that's not the number we're going to sell it at, because that's not going to be supported by the 100 to 120% AMI. So, you know, we're going to have a gap on every unit that we sell, and in effect, what we are doing is transferring that loss and that expense from the developer to us. And I'd like to know how much it is, so that we can be knowledgeable about how much we are going to have to eat in terms of, you know, developing this as middle income housing at those AMI levels. I think that's something that's important for the council to understand. And so I would hope that as we see, hopefully we'll see more things like this, but when we see a development project of this type, I'd like to see what the numbers look like, so that we as members of council can say, oh, okay, it's going to be X number of units, it's going to be a deficit of Y per unit, and we're going to be in the whole Z dollars, and we're going to have to find either somebody else to build it who will assume that deficit, or we're going to have to fund that deficit, because that goes back to the issue of, are we receiving adequate community benefit? And it's also something we can compare to the value of a finished lot, and what is the value that we're receiving by getting that. So I'm a little uncomfortable with the degree of analysis that we've received. I'm going to support it anyway because we need the housing so badly. But you know, once I saw that there were two alternatives in terms of what the developer is permitted to do, it was always clear to me that only one road was going to be taken. We were never going to get developed homes because there's a loss with respect to those homes, and either the developer is going to bear the loss or we're going to bear the loss. And the developer appropriately and not surprisingly is going to ask us to bear that loss. So I would like more information when we do a project of this kind. I'd like to understand what it is that we're not getting, and what it is that we have to pay for going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Duly noted. Matt?
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion, if that's all right.
Great. We're going to need 3 of them, but you can get started with 1.
As long as I can say and.
Nope.
Then don't put the and in there.
But Tina, did you?
All right, can we get the language on the screen too when it's ready? Yeah, quick go.
Well, you'll have the chance after the motion is made. Yeah.
All right, let's get going. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion to approve the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan BVCP land use map change for the property located at 2801 J Road from public PUB to mixed density residential MXR.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Do either of you want to comment on the motion at hand?
I'll be real quick. I think this project has a lot of promise, and it's been a long time coming, and so thank you for sticking with it and trying to get us to the home stretch. I'll just say that what we're going to do with the Area 3 Planning Reserve, this is just a taste of the type of density and housing that we're going to be doing in that area overall, so I'm glad we're getting started here.
I just had a comment or a question whether we could consider specifically asking the county to use some of the 2B funding for this project specifically because it's county city through an annexation. So maybe they can give us an extra bump to support this particular project.
Great idea. We got a motion and a second on the table. Should we do a roll call here, please, Alicia?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The roll call for the Boulder Valley Comp Plan update will start with Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Yes.
Councilmember Wallach.
Yes.
Weiner.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Folkerts.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
And Shuhart.
Yes.
The comprehensive plan update is hereby approved unanimously.
Do you want to keep rolling or something else?
I'll roll it on. All right. Second motion. I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 1355, setting forth findings of fact and conclusions regarding the annexation of approximately 4.86 acres of land generally located at 2801 J Road and including areas of public street to the city of Boulder.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. I just want to pause it, make sure nobody else wanted to get in on the comments here before we finish out our motions voting. Not seeing any, then if we can go to the vote. Vote, please, Alicia.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The vote for Resolution 1355 will start with Councilmember Wallach.
Yes.
Weiner.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Folkerts.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Shuhart.
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Yes.
Resolution 1355 is hereby approved unanimously.
You're on a roll, Matt.
All right, for the trifecta. Make a motion to adopt Ordinance 8659, annexing to the city of Boulder approximately 4.86 acres of land generally located at 2801 J Road and including areas of public street with an initial zoning classification of residential mixed 2 RMX2 as described in Chapter 9-5 Modular Zone System BRC 1981, amending the zoning district map, forming a part of said chapter to include said land in the above mentioned zoning district and setting forth related details.
Second.
Motion is second. Vote, please, Alicia.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We'll start the vote for Ordinance 8659 with Councilmember Weiner.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Folkerts.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Shuhart.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Yes.
And Councilmember Wallach.
Yes.
Ordinance 8659 is hereby approved unanimously.
Fantastic. All right, I got a couple council members who'd like to make a couple remarks. Lauren and then Tara.
I just wanted to thank you for sticking with it. And I think this is going to be a great addition. And, previously on council, we have really struggled with how we bring forward middle income housing. It's a very difficult product to kind of make the math work for us. So I really appreciate the contribution that this will make to that program for our community. And I look forward to hearing more about your thoughts about streamlining this process. Thank you.
One of the reasons why I am smiling tonight is because of this. And we've waited a long time, and it's been a long road for middle income housing. And I know last council, we really tried hard. Thank you for sticking with us. Like Lauren said, I'm going to pretty much ditto everything Lauren said and just tell you that I'm just happy. It's a weird thing to say you're thankful. I guess a lot of people would say, oh, don't say that to a developer, but I really am thankful that we found a way to make this work, and I'm looking forward to it. So thanks again. Like Lauren said, thanks.
All right. Well, with that, congratulations. All right. It has been a long road, appreciating your perseverance and looking forward to the next steps and seeing happy families move into those houses one day. All right. That concludes our public hearing. So if we can have our matter from the city manager, please.
Yes, sir. The matter from the city manager is item number 6A on tonight's agenda, and it is the discussion and appointment of a council representative for the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan that is referenced as BVCP Update Process Subcommittee.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And before I throw it to our Director of Planning and Development Services, Brad, just wanted to thank all those who were able to attend our Boulder Valley Comp Plan kickoff last month. Really successful, and really happy to see so many community members there, as well as many of you. But for now, we are thinking about a representative to join us in that work. So Brad, take it away.
Thank you, Nuri, and thanks for the acknowledgement on the kickoff. It was a great event. Process subcommittees have been used in the past for larger projects such as CU South. It's been used several times in previous updates to the comprehensive plan. It was used most recently, by my recollection at least, in the Boulder Social Streets. I think council members Benjamin and Weiner were part of that. It is a technical overview, probably dry in that regard. To just review what staff has put together as the planned processes that are associated with, in this case, the comprehensive plan update. There are 4 bodies that will ultimately review and need to approve the same comprehensive plan version approximately 8 months from now. The planning board, yourselves, the county commissioners, and the county planning commission. So one representative is sought from each of those groups, and I'm here tonight to ask for the same from council, and happy to answer any questions.
Great, and we had expressions of interest via hotline from myself and Councilmember Benjamin, and I think we're going to arm wrestle here. Is that the way it's going to work? No, I'm happy to defer to Matt. I put myself. Yep. Yes.
I did send a hotline this afternoon. Was it not received? Am I not good at hotlines? Awesome. I did send a hotline.
Oh, sorry. We did not receive that.
Put in why and all the stuff, and no. Okay.
Do you want to speak up now, Taisha?
I put my hat in the ring, one, because I realized that I love process. I just love it. It's my favorite thing. And I am excited about the opportunity to learn more, not just about the process, but also, in that experience, to strengthen relationships across. The other piece for me is I lost one of my council appointments because the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council is dissolved. So I have more time than I had previously, and just wanted to be of service for this really critical and important role. In addition, the expertise that I bring is expertise as an equity specialist on processes and protocols, as well as on strategic planning at the state level, inclusive of just those processes and protocols. So, again, I know that there, and I thank you, Brad, for the conversations that, we will, as a full council, have an opportunity to review those processes and protocols. So if I'm not selected, I can still weigh in at that time.
Appreciate that. Well, I will be stepping back, kind of regardless. Sounds like we got Taish and Matt both putting their names forward here. I will say, having served on a couple of these process subcommittees myself, is that they are not the most exciting meetings. So it's definitely a service rather than frankly, I'm grateful to not have to sit through all the meetings. But
point of clarification: how many meetings are there? Like, what? I didn't get a sense of frequency and duration.
Yes, we are. I am anticipating maybe 4 or 5 throughout the 18 months. Maybe a couple at the beginning, one in the middle, a couple as we lay out the hearing process.
I guess I don't know if anybody has any further thoughts, or if this is a vote kind of a thing.
Well, as delightful as the prospect of physical combat might be for our entertainment values, I would either suggest that A, they sit down and try to work it out, or B, I'm going to suggest that seniority should play a role in this one. And I would probably be supporting, not probably, I would be supporting Matt just because of that seniority. But if you want to duke it out, we have space.
Yeah, do you all want to talk about it offline? We just heard, Taish, from you just now, so we haven't had a chance to have a dialogue up to this point.
I'm hearing the seniority piece. I'm slightly persuaded, but at the same time, I'm interested, so I put my hat in the ring, and that's how that works. Thank you.
Lauren?
This is a clarifying question for Brad. So you mentioned kind of at the end that these meetings are about the sort of technical aspect of like how to get through the process. At the beginning, are they more about public engagement, or are they still going to kind of focus more on just the nuts and bolts of procedurally how this moves forward?
I would say the combination of the two, the nuts and bolts of engagement, but then also the hearing process. So we, as part of the overview to the update, presented a preliminary engagement schedule. One of the first things this group would do after orienting would be to just re-review that, which has been, slightly modified since we initially brought it to you. And it's multi-component, obviously, and just going through that. I would probably do a mid-process check-in, like I indicated, which would be mid next year. And then as we imagine the series of hearings between the 4 bodies in spring and summer of 2026, I would imagine this group getting together again to just lay out the sequencing of that. Did that answer the question?
Fine with stepping back. I do have a thing around just our appointments, and mine extends to the end of 2026. So, it would, if there is a change in representation, then there would maybe some concerns around continuums and continuations. So that is something to consider. I'm happy to serve as the second chair, and so perhaps that's a way that compromise, so I can still stay engaged and involved, not go to the meetings. But in the event that I would need to continue on, and I can do that. So that's what I'm offering, but I am actually very still interested. And again, I just have concerns around the exclusive nature of planning, in my experience and those of other marginalized people in this process. Thank you.
So Taisha, thanks for that offer. So perhaps we could designate Matt as a representative and yourself as an alternate. If in the event of Matt not attending a meeting, you could attend in his stead. And if he chooses not to run or is unsuccessful in his reelection, you could take over from him at that time. Okay. How's that?
That sounds good.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Hopefully only the former is one that's taken up.
Right.
So appreciate that. And I just appreciate the graciousness from you, Mayor Brockett, and you, Councilmember Adams. I thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Tina.
Yeah, and I just think maybe there'll be other opportunities where people with less tenure can start gaining the institutional knowledge that surrounds this process. So if there are ways that staff sees just to sit in maybe on one meeting on engagement or one meeting just to be an observer, maybe that would be good for all of us.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got Councilmember Benjamin as a representative and Councilmember Adams as an alternate.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
Appreciate it. All right, we got one thing left.
Yes, sir. That one thing is our item 8A, matters from the mayor and members of council. It is the discussion to reaffirm the city's commitment to Vision Zero.
Ryan, you want to take this away? And I know we can be relatively brief about this, right?
I'll try. Okay, colleagues, I would like to propose that we make an official show of support for the breadth of work that our staff are doing on our Vision Zero initiatives. And through that, not just make our streets safer, but unlock freedom for a lot of people who need it, including kids, people with disabilities, and pedestrians. So I'll try to be brief, but I do need to outline this given the procedure that I think this requires. So the purpose of this is to give the work that our staff are doing the greatest chance of success. I have talked with staff, and I think the best way to do this is a resolution. So I'm going to ask for a not a 5 vote for a resolution to craft the language, and I'll propose to briefly just explain the contents of that. And I'd like to acknowledge we do have Valerie Watson, Interim Director for Transportation Mobility, back there, who's been waiting this whole meeting to be here if she's needed. So I'll just do a quick, there's a few things just to point out, and then I'll see if staff want to respond, and then invite any other feedback from colleagues. So just a few points of background. As you may all well know, Boulder is leading the pack in Vision Zero initiatives from a national perspective in a lot of ways. We're at the forefront in terms of the breadth and the rigor of what is known to be possible among cities. But it is incredibly challenging work. It's incredibly challenging nationally. It's incredibly challenging here, and there are concerning trends, including this last year, Colorado had the most pedestrian deaths. This is in the Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims Declaration. In your packet, it's in page 859. So there's just basically 4 things, and I just want to be thorough so this is clear and take any feedback. So there's 4 items. I'm just going to give you 4 issues, and then I'm going to give you the proposed language that goes in the measure, or the summary of the language. So issue 1, staff is making great progress on Vision Zero initiatives, and we have a ton of built environment safety enhancing feature or projects in the pipeline, include calming, separation, automatic enforcement, but the severe crash trends are worsening. So the proposed resolution idea is that we authorize staff to move forward with these initiatives expeditiously, streamlining and being innovative about community engagement when we can, while taking no shortcuts with equity or otherwise, in order to be productive with time. So that's the first idea. The second idea is, start with the issue. So issue is, the city has a lot of plans and practices in the works that deal with transportation. There's big ones, including the BVCP, the Climate Action Plan, and there's more tactical ones, like signals practices. These all significantly affect and are affected by street safety. So there's 2 proposed ideas that we resolve. 1, we assert that safety first is our policy in and around transportation, just as we commonly do elsewhere in the city. And this would be a way for council to officially endorse the Vision Zero part of the strategic plan that came from Nuria back in the spring. And then the other part of this is to reflect that our body knows that vehicle speed, vehicle size, and exposure are the primary drivers of risk in our streets, and those factors need to be addressed in our plans that impact them. So that's the second one. The third one is that the chronic structural nature of dangerous streets is driven by economics and other forces that are regional, statewide, they're national, and these are factors that Boulder doesn't control directly, but that we can meaningfully influence. So the resolution concept is that we make a statement of significant need and support and commitment for transformative Vision Zero policies from the standpoint of us as elected officials to appeal to our interagency partners that staff on the ground can speak to. This has new significance after Tuesday. Finally, the fourth one is the science and practice of safe streets is going through a period of real evolution right now. We could talk about that, but I'll just leave it at that. The resolution concept is that we assert to be proactive about incorporating the latest understanding into our approaches and being open to changing methods and conventions towards the outcome of making system-based improvements. I'm sorry that's a little bit high level. We could get into the details, but that's the idea. So these are the concepts that I would propose we, with an out of 5, put into language that would then come back to council. And before I stop, I'll just address a few things that I think you might ask. One, why is this important?
Super quick. Just if you could do super quick on this bit.
Okay. Why is this important? Evidence from around the country shows that having elected officials stand up for it matters. Why is it so easy or straightforward? This is affirming work that's underway, adds no new work, and it will not create discussions about trade-offs. Why now? There's concerning trends, and there's a few others, but Aaron, I can see your body language, so I'll leave it at that. I did want to be thorough because, as I said, I do propose that with your permission, we'll move forward with language, and I would want that to have fidelity to what you want to see. So with your permission, Aaron, could I ask if staff want to say anything?
And I'm sorry to cut you off a little bit. I just know it's getting late,
Yeah.
and we're past our meeting allotted amount of time. So
Okay.
I think you're getting your points across extremely well. I think we're getting a good sense of what you're looking for.
Okay. I'm done. Would it be appropriate to ask if Nuria wants to respond in any way?
Well, I'm happy to, but first I'll ask our interim director of transportation and mobility to come on down since Valerie has been patiently waiting with us. Come on down, Valerie.
Good evening, council members. Valerie Watson, Interim Director, Transportation and Mobility. Oh, a little closer, sorry. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this and for taking up this this item tonight. Councilmember Schuhart has shared the concepts with Nuria and I that he spoke to tonight. We really appreciated that. We're generally comfortable with the areas of emphasis that he's lifting up. Also just very appreciative of the council members' desire to lift up all of the really sophisticated and impactful work that the city has been doing for a long time around Vision Zero, and we continue to do. And that's all in service of, achieving our community's Vision Zero goal. So really appreciate that. And, we're aware that the council member's not trying to add to the department's work plan or, change our focus around all the work that we're doing with our Vision Zero action plan, our core arterial network initiative. So yeah, appreciate that. And certainly we would want to consider any changes to these concepts that might come out of the discussion tonight from what the council member has previously shared with us. But what was shared is certainly aligned with all of our ongoing efforts. We've made a lot of progress with Vision Zero. When you compare us to peer cities, especially, we still have a lot of work to do. We need to address our most vulnerable road users. People walking and bicycling, they're overrepresented in our crash data, especially with severe crashes. So, we believe in our work that one death is too many on our streets here in Boulder, and Vision Zero is within reach. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak to that tonight. and here for any other questions you might have.
I'll only add to that, and I always appreciate, I take my direction on all things transportation and mobility from Valerie, so ditto all of that, but I'll just say, Councilmember Shuhard, that I, appreciate your sharing this in advance. Your concepts, I think, are lift up all of staff's great work, and I just appreciate that. I think our staff has done a tremendous job in advancing so many of our goals. And frankly, we don't do that alone. We do that in conjunction with you. We do that in conjunction with TAB. We do that in conjunction with our community partners. And so it is a joint collective effort in that regard. But it also represents a sense of urgency as we were moving forward and a call to action to all of our partners. We do not do this in a vacuum, but we do this with our regional partners as well. And as the concepts, as you have outlined them, also think about what are the things that are coming down the pike that are beyond transportation and that maybe some of our departmental partners have added levers to add to this. And so as we take your concepts and try to put words to them, if it is the will of council, we will be thinking about that moving forward. And so we await to see what council decides. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Lauren?
You mentioned that this was aligned with staff goals, but I was curious if you feel like this will help with efficiency or streamlining, or feeling that you have the concrete backing of council in order to do things in a efficient manner.
Thanks for that question, Councilmember Fulkerts. Certainly, we are always looking to opportunities to find external grant funding to do the transformative work we do on our corridors. And so we're always trying to work towards those timelines when we know when grant cycles are coming up. And it's really important for us to be able to work efficiently and hold the processes that we need to, but also to prepare for those opportunities. And so having this affirmation of council's support as a body is really, it's helpful to bring that clarity when we have community conversations about the work that we do, the processes that we have, and I would say the answer is yes. Thank you.
I got Mark and then Tara.
I appreciate what Councilmember Shushad has done. I do have a suggestion. I've only seen this language about an hour before the meeting. Would it be possible for us, before we make a definitive decision, to have an opportunity to look at it and see if we have any comments, or we'd want to do anything a little differently? I mean, I'm inclined to support it if push comes to shove, but I would love to be able to reflect upon it a little bit before we take that step.
I think, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so the proposal is to ask for a nod of 5 on the concepts, and then it would come back, the language would come back, probably, I think, on consent.
Well, I can move with that.
But I think you might also have an opportunity to reach out one-on-one to share some of those thoughts and language. Okay. Yeah. I got Tara, Nicole, Tina.
This might have nothing to do with it, but while you're up here, I'm curious how we can actually get people to drive 20 miles an hour.
I'm sorry, out of scope. I'm going to call a technical foul.
No,
don't answer that question.
I'll call you about that, and on our one-on-one, just expect that question.
All right, Nicole.
Thank you, and thanks, Ryan, for bringing this forward. I thought I heard Valerie say that this would not require a significant amount of staff work. And so I'm wondering if this, just process-wise, is this a nod of 5? Or is this us just agreeing that, yes, Ryan, go forward, draft your resolution, talk to us, and we either approve it or talk about it at a future meeting?
Our city attorney has thoughts.
Thanks for the question. This is appropriate for a nod of 5, as it will take some resources, not a lot of resources, but some. And so we would appreciate a nod of 5 before we move forward.
Thank you. And just to clarify then, and sorry if I'm 2 hours ahead and my brain is a little tired. So basically what we're saying is that this may help staff, and it is minimal work on everybody's end. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Tina?
Yeah, following up a little bit with that, I just would like to get some clarity around what really changes if we pass this resolution. What is the gap that we're filling, and just ensuring, like, it's really hard not to think of Iris, but would this change the way we would have approached Iris? Would be a good question for me to answer if a community member asks. So, does it make a change with something like that? The other thing is, I'm not a big fan of resolutions for long-term work. I prefer resolutions that are responsive to a situation, and I could imagine a resolution coming after Tuesday. I would rather see these concepts in our Boulder Valley Comp Plan, where it's a lasting document. It's referenced every time we think about land use and the interactions in our community. But if we want to do the resolution now, I think that's fine, but I think we should expire it and then commit to putting it into the BVCP, where it's a lasting ideology. Resolutions get lost in our resolution library, and when you're gone, no one will remember it at all. And I can point to many from the Boulder Valley School District if you're not convinced. So well, it's just a thing. So we do these resolutions, we forget about them. We need this somewhere lasting.
It's a good reminder of the ephemerality of all of our work, Tina.
Could I just respond on the first point? What are we trying to do? I didn't maybe do the best job in the 4 issues in which I tried to outline the problem in the proposal. But on the Iris one, this is an acknowledgement that there are probably more streamlined ways than to have 30+ community meetings to do a mile stretch of road, and to do that in a way that is robust, tells the story about where we're going. But it is not us telling staff how to do it, but rather that we trust you to do this in a way that meets modern standards, meets your professional approach. Let us know if you need help. So it is a way to give staff the confidence that we will back them in their professional judgment. So feel free to, if you wanted to. Okay.
Good. Well, I'm not seeing any other hands, so we're looking for a nod of 5. Ryan, I'll just say I appreciate you bringing this forward and appreciate your points about that when elected leadership shows support for programs like this, it helps accomplish them more expeditiously and more effectively. So I'll call for a show of hands to see if there's a nod of 5. Raise your hand if you're interested. I got everybody. So that's a yes. So we'll move to the next steps and look forward to something on consent before too long.
Thank you, and thanks, Valerie.
Is it too late to add flying cars to that resolution?
That's no flying cars. And I'll just say, Valerie, thanks so much for sticking it through to the end with us on this matter. Really appreciate your time. Did you have something, Taisha? We are done with this item, so we're wrapping up the meeting, but if you'd like to say something.
I just wanted to thank the staff for the report on the North Boulder day services. It was very helpful to get that additional information. I do have a question, and I understand that Chief Redfern is not able to be here, but I did have some questions around some of the meetings that I know that he's been engaged in around with the county and sheriff's office. I also would love to get more information around the timeline for some of the things that you had shared in response to public comment, specifically the substation, and when is the next time that we're going to be talking about this? So just so that community knows that it's not just next year, and that's why I actually asked for this to even be an item, but it got pushed to an IP item, unfortunately.
I can certainly, it depends on what questions you have. I mean, I don't know what questions you have about the meetings with the county and the sheriffs, but if we have that, we can certainly get back to you on what those were and give you some updates.
Well, I know there were just some tensions around, who has the authority to do what. And
jurisdiction and whatnot.
Exactly.
And I certainly, in my conversations, hopefully tomorrow, and as we continue to sort of figure out, I know I'm having a conversation with the county administrator. We're working some of that out in terms of Can we notice? How do we jointly try to do some enforcement on county land where they do not have a camping ban? How do we address some of those issues? So we continue to try to work some of that out. So as that gets resolved, certainly we'll come back to you. I can't give you a timeline, but know that we are trying to do that expeditiously. I will say that we are, in terms of the substation, those are not fast conversations because they require resources. They require money, quite frankly. And they're not siloed to North Boulder. As the chief is thinking about what does that look like across the city, there are, I don't want to speak for him and I don't want to speak too publicly because there are a variety of things, but he is thinking about the city and he has not actually shared this entirely. It has not been vetted with his leadership team and across his department, but he has been thinking about ways in which to deploy across the city in various ways and partnering, frankly, with various departments. So it's not just in his, if you think about to reimagining public safety, you'll recall that there was a notion of holistic governance because it is not always just PD that responds to issues, right? And so part of his conversations with his department colleagues are, is it not just PD who's available, but also who else can be there from department? So speaking to department colleagues, so it is not perhaps just BPD who is deployed across the city, but are there other components of city folks who are in partnership there in tandem? So those conversations are ongoing. I'm pleased to say that the chief has almost warned me that they are almost fully staffed and that I should probably expect a staffing request next year per the reimagining plan. And so we'll see if that is true. But as that staffing component is fully done, then there are opportunities to deploy differently. And with that comes space. And with that comes how do we pay for space and where do we pay for space? So all of those considerations need to come together. And as we go through that and figure out what resources we may or may not have, that doesn't happen in a week, but it's certainly as that moves forward, my commitment is to let you know as soon as we can. I cannot commit to having that happen next week or next month, but know that it is on our radar to try to bring it out as quickly as we can, because we know it is not just an urgent need for community, but I know it is on the chief's mind as well.
Okay. I definitely appreciate that. And again, I'm keeping raising this because this is an issue of coexistence. And if we want to make sure that we are able to serve all of our community members, then we need to address these escalating crimes and other issues that they're identifying. It's not going away. It seems to be getting worse. And so my concern is that we are compromised, that there could be a backlash to trying to provide services for our in-house community because we're not able to ensure that those neighboring communities, will have the same level of safety as other parts of our community. So I just am very mindful about that. And then as far as the substation, I love us, but I reflect back on when we asked for safe and supportive streets, or sorry, what was it? Not safe and supportive. It's the camping, sanctioned camping. There it is. Sorry, thank you. Transitional community thing. And we got that report, and it was like the gold standard of my larger point is I appreciate the substation. I know he's thinking thoroughly about what it would look like, but I'm just curious, what could an interim look like, right? Even just leasing for a month, right? I just am looking for the short term as we are short-term solutions as we are trying to create long-term sustainable solutions. So that's the balance.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is we are committing a lot of time, resources to a long-term strategy, and I appreciate that. But what I'm not hearing is what are our short-term commitments to community members and who are still being disproportionately impacted in the North.
And I appreciate that. I think for those of you who know me, I am not one to let perfect be the enemy of good ever. So I'm not just thinking about long term. We have done some short term stuff. We have added patrols. We have deployed cameras differently. We're thinking about a variety of different interventions, but that doesn't solve, right, the longer term issue. And we're continuing to look at what those trends are. We knew that calls would go up as more services and the day services now expanded hours. We are looking and continuing to look at trends because at some point we think that will stabilize. We have seen some of those crime stats go down the further you go out in the radius and the closer you go out, some of those numbers are growing. So we're paying attention to that. And we are looking at what are those, I'm not just thinking about longer term in terms of like we must own a building. We are thinking about leasing. We are thinking about whether the library may be a place to have a substation. We are thinking about what could that look like in different configurations. And if we think about, to your example, which I think is a really good one about sanctioned encampment, we didn't come with those examples about the bronze standard and the gold standard overnight. It took us quite a few, I wouldn't say months, I would say it took years to have the conversation about whether we would think about sanctioned encampment at all. But I hear the continued desire and sense of urgency and know that we share that. We are not wanting to not address those issues, and we continue to work in partnership with our neighbors in North Boulder because we know that it is a concern and we want to make sure we're addressing it as well we can. But hear that.
I certainly appreciate that. And I just want to say there is nothing, I did not mean to indicate that y'all were not responding in the short term. I'm just saying that those interventions are not resulting in a decrease. And so what are the additional things that we need to do in the interim? So again, I did read it. It was impressive, and I acknowledge and commend all the work that has been done. So
thank you.
Certainly.
Yeah, appreciate that, Taisha, because there have been some alarming trends with increasing crime up in that section. So good to hear that short-term and longer-term things are being worked on.
Appreciate that.
Good enough on that? All right. With that, then, I will go ahead and gavel is closed here at 9:34 p.m. Good evening, everybody.